Second down and 10. They're in field goal range. Pressure. He stepped away from it. Fires, and it is caught. Oh, the deflection. Jalen Pope, the touchdown off the hands of Malik Muhammad.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Advance to the national championship game. Ewers lobs it up, and it is incomplete. Intended for Mitchell. Elijah Jackson had the coverage. Washington hangs on and wins the All-State Sugar Bowl with a college football playoff semifinal.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Is thrown for 398. Trying to get above 400, and he's on target. Odunze the catch with Ryan Watts.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Has time, delivers across the middle, and the catch is made by Tyler Morris, who tight-ropes down the sidelines. Touchdown, Michigan, what a play!
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
High punt, and it's muffed again and picked up at the 1 yard line. Well, it wasn't a turnover, but it sets up McCarthy a long way away. That was Jake Thaw back there, not Morgan this time.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Three Michigan tight ends in the ballgame. They hand it to Corum again and makes the cut. First down. Spins and scores. Blake Corum puts Michigan on top in overtime.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome in our second show back from the holiday break, and Smokey has taken ill, as they said in the old days. He's coughing quite a bit, and in the radio and YouTube, in the microphone game, anything you do with a microphone, coughing is about the worst thing you can do. Coughing, sneezing, any kind of bodily noise that's not speaking is about the worst thing you can do. So he is at home recuperating today, and we'll take you through the next 3 hours. We're going to talk a lot of Big 12 offseason day throughout the show. We're going to have experts on West Virginia, BYU, and Kansas State to talk about it. We'll talk about the actual matchup of the national championship game next week between Michigan and Washington. Obviously, yesterday we spent most of the time breaking down the games that had happened, but and then some transfer portal news that's pretty interesting when it comes to Will Howard of Kansas State. But and Craig, let's start with that, and we'll get to the national championship game in a little bit. But today, Will Howard is visiting. Well, it's not going to be today, but it's been announced that he's going to visit Ohio State, whose plan for quarterback has been muddled since Kyle McCord left, which feels like it was a mutual decision on both parts. My question for you is that they've waited to this point. Is Will Howard an upgrade over Kyle McCord?
Yeah, I think he's an upgrade over Kyle McCord. I think he's played a lot more football than Kyle McCord has. You know, I don't know about an actual full-on spent couple hours in the film room X's and O's type video breakdown. I'm sure that the quarterback gurus out there can tell you why I'm more close to being right or wrong or what have you. But based on the eye test and things of that nature and just watching over the past couple of years, yeah, I'd say Will Howard would be an upgrade over Kyle McCord. Now, I don't want to act like Will Howard's also all of these other big-name quarterbacks that are or have been out there and that he's like the next surefire, big-name type of a guy, but he is the biggest name that remains on the market now with Cam Ward deciding that he's going to go at least pursue the NFL unless he changes his mind over the next few days. So I think Will Howard is coming off of a year where it was a little bit disappointing, you know, coming off the Big 12 title game and just the way K-State finished last season, despite the blowout loss to Alabama in the bowl game, that you had really high hopes and an optimism for K-State. But it was just pretty clear throughout the season that whatever the situation might have been, people were clamoring for Avery Johnson and what he brought to the table and the electricity, and just wanted to see more of that. And it was just bizarre, not because Avery Johnson's not a really exciting young player and great player, but because you just thought Will Howard would have played well enough that really wouldn't have entered the conversation just yet, but it started to, and it really did by the end. It was like, all right, they made a choice. They wanted Avery Johnson over Will Howard. Now, granted, Avery Johnson's got a lot more eligibility and a lot more untapped potential, so that makes sense. You've kind of seen Will Howard do his thing now at this point in Manhattan, but yeah, he's a really good player. He's, I guess, the best available quarterback that's out there right now. In Ohio State, their whole plan of, well, we'll just plan around the guys that we have and roll that way. I didn't really ever buy that in this market and this era of college football. That's just one of those programs that if they have any sort of a deficiency at quarterback, that they're going to go and be one of those teams that plucks away one of the big sharks in the ocean, And so those are kind of running out at this point, and he's sort of the only one still swimming around. So, I mean, that's not necessarily a guy that, lights the world on fire, but I do think he's if anything, a little bit of an upgrade over Kyle McCord, and yet at the same time, not somebody that you just go gaga over if you're a Buckeyes fan of like, all right, there's the missing piece. Like, we've unlocked all of our potential for next year. There's some questions still about Will Howard, especially coming off of this year. So a little bit of a mixed bag reaction, I guess, is what I have, Paul.
Yeah.
On that possibility of, like, I think it'd be a good move for them. I think that they need more in that quarterback room. But at the same time, I don't think it's like a guaranteed, like, all right, put them in the playoff. Buckeyes are in I guess 12 team next year, right? But go ahead and book their spot in the playoff. I don't know about that just yet. So, we'll see there.
Hey, look, and the thing I think that makes this so bizarre is it's not like Kyle McCord was 8-4. I mean, He was 11-1. So that's where it comes in of like, all right, look, Kyle McCord's biggest sin at Ohio State was he didn't beat Michigan. And that's a huge sin. I get it for Ohio State fans. But again, you've got to, if the goal is to win a national championship, I mean, I like Will Howard, and I think that he brings probably more to the table than Kyle McCord does, but I don't think he's the kind of upgrade that I would have expected. And look, he might not even wind up there. We don't know where he's going to go. He might get up there and be like, I don't like it here, And I know that he is entertained, and I think he's visited USC, but USC, to that end, on Will Howard, has an interesting decision to make as well, because Miller Moss – and you try not to put too much into bowl games, but look, he threw 6 touchdown passes. So it looks like he's ready to at least have the opportunity to compete for the starting job. And the coaches that are there are, with Lincoln Riley and Cliff Kingsbury in the same room, you've got QB guru kind of all over the place. So sometimes maybe you just bet on yourself if you're USC and say, I think we can win with this guy. But I don't know if the market for QBs has maybe tilted to what fits USC either, because I wasn't sure that Will Howard, even though you're going to play for those QB gurus, if he was the kind of guy that USC necessarily wanted either.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cam Ward deciding to go to the NFL really threw some teams for like, what's Miami still planning on doing at this stage?
Yeah.
I mean, they're still quarterback hunting, right? I think, going back to Will Howard and Kyle McCord, I don't think you see much drop-off in the passing game if you look at the numbers from this past year, but where you would stand to benefit most would be from Will Howard's legs. Not that he's like a guy who's going to run for 100 yards or every week or anything, but he is a lot more of a threat as far as using his feet goes. And so that is where, if you're Ohio State and that's tempting to you, of like throwing a little bit of that into your offense, that would tilt Will Howard. But passing-wise, Kyle McCord had better numbers, including his touchdown-interception ratio, but Will Howard a lot more on the ground. So, that's something that what does Ohio State want to do? What do they want to look like moving forward? What tweaks do they want to make? Or what do they want to lean on offensively? What are they looking for from their next quarterback prospect? So I think that'll play into it as well, Will Howard's use of his legs. But not that it was, like I said, like having an Avery Johnson, who is very much like a dual threat dude. But with USC, that's a curious one. I mean, I got home in time from Christmas break to roll in and see that bowl game right as it had started, and was very impressed with Miller Moss. I'm very hesitant as well, though, to rely or lean too much on a bowl game performance, just because those can be so hit or miss and not really indicative of the real big picture, but he was impressive. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He was playing with a lot of confidence. I don't know if that sells tickets for you in Los Angeles. I don't know that Caleb Williams sold a bunch for you, though, either, in the grand scheme of things. I mean, he did, but there's always the knocks about, just the love of the West Coast football and all of that. I don't know if Miller Moss is somebody who gets the fans all riled up out west like a Caleb Williams would, but is he your best option at this point? He might be. I mean, I don't know what kind of fish they have on the line right now that are sitting there chomping at their bait. I mean, it appeared that Will Howard was one of those guys, but beyond that, haven't heard too much. So would it shock me if Lincoln Riley said, hey, we're going to roll with who we got a little bit, but I can also see why you'd be pretty optimistic about what you've got coming down the pipeline. We got our Malachi Nelson question answered over the break when he announced he was going to enter the transfer portal, which was what a forgettable stint that he had after so much hype coming out of the high school ranks. So, yeah, that's a curious piece of the puzzle as well, is what does USC ultimately decide to do at quarterback. But that Miller Moss showing was pretty fun. It was one of the, I don't know, maybe I just didn't watch enough of the bowl games. I didn't watch every single one of them, but that was one of the more entertaining, games that I saw, and one of the more entertaining performances that I saw was Miller Moss's passing efforts. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what Lincoln Riley decides to do there. But Will Howard's still out there dangling. I mean, there's options, and there's big name options. I mean, obviously, and throw Miami into that mix as well. He's been rumored with every single one of those schools. So, yeah, what eventually gives here with Will Howard and with these other schools that need a quarterback still?
Yeah, Malachi Nelson, this is what's going to befuddle me about him. And he might wind up going somewhere and having a great career. But, again, I mentioned the QB gurus in that room.
Yeah.
Like, if you could be coached by the guys who have all those Heisman trophies, and, I mean, you've got Cliff Kingsbury, who's got Manziel and Mahomes. And you've got Lincoln Riley, who has all the other ones he has, and Murray and Mayfield and Jalen Hurts and Caleb Williams. If you've got those guys in the room, to me, that's where you'd want to go if you have the opportunity. And maybe it just wasn't a fit ultimately for Malachi Nelson. But
there's also, and I don't want to put this on him, I just want to say this for everybody. Like, we're obviously not, 10 toes down in Los Angeles, and seeing every little thing, or on the Trojans message board and every little rumor. So for all we know, sometimes when we talk about guys, like, there might have been a fallout or there might have been something. So I don't know. But I think in this one, not knowing anything other than just the transactional nature of the transfer portal itself and the fact that young players, especially quarterbacks, jump into this thing, you think that's where you'd want to be and stick it out. But I also know in this era of, if you're Malachi Nelson, I'm sure somebody needing a quarterback has called you because you're a 5-star talent, and you are in a situation at USC where, like, hey, Miller Moss is probably going to, I know that there's that going on, so I can see why he's coveted. But you would think just from a growth standpoint, the wise move would be like to just sit it out in Los Angeles or go earn the job, but be around those guys that you mentioned. Yeah, but that's just not the world we live in now.
Yeah, I mean, you can learn how to do it from a master chef, or you can go to a Wendy's. I mean, I mean, I don't know. Like, that's where I kind of get confused on that one. And look, and look, everybody's going to make their own decision. Like, what's best for you as a player and a person. That one just will kind of always, I'll just always wonder about it. Like, what was going on there? Because I do think that, and if you read Grace Rayner and Manny Navarro and the Athletic today had a great piece on, where they talked to recruits anonymously about the portal and NIL. And most of the ones they talked to said, look, it's about the same everywhere I went. And sometimes they said I left some money on the table because I wanted to go to the school that I wanted to go to. I mean, I do think that that's, like, while it can get crazy, I do think that the market, pretty much is set for, this is how much you can get, and there'll be these people who can give that to you. And there's probably certain schools, I think USC is probably set up to pay, what your market value is. But if you don't want to be there and you can get a little bit more somewhere else, I get doing that. But it is just strange to me that, I know $50,000 seems like a lot of money, but it's for a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. It's $50,000 that you're not going to, it'll be gone over a quick part of your lifetime, worth it to not get the kind of training you're going to get it from those coaches.
See, that's where we just absolutely have no idea.
Yeah.
And sometimes as media, it's okay to acknowledge that and not pretend that we know. That's gonna be a New Year's resolution, is not to pretend like we have to know every single thing about every single thing, because at 99% of the time that's BS. And so I don't know. I won't pretend to know Malachi Nelson's personal situation, but in general, yeah, it's a money grab. It feels like in some cases, but I also know this. I also know that some of these valuations we see are total and utter BS as well.
Well, and they're just wild ass guesses.
Yeah, wild ass guesses, and I know there's a formula for some of them or whatever, and there's this and there's that, but I don't know. I feel like we get kind of fooled by these valuations, and if we're getting fooled, then how do you think a 17, 18-year-old kid who's looking at his NIL value is getting fooled? And then when his street agent or his assistant coach on the high school team or whoever it is that's, Uncle Jerry or something that's weighing in like, hey, I just see on this site says you're worth $2.5 million. Like, okay, well, you can't not believe that, right? So I think that kind of clutters the expectations as well on a probably case-by-case basis. It's a useful tool, I think, in some ways, like those types of things. But I also do think you have to be very clear of, like, this is not an exact science. There is a formula that is put into this whole idea of trying to estimate, but at the same time, it's not exact. And there's some that, I don't know about you guys, I see them and I'm like, how in the world, like, how is that even possible? So, yeah, I don't know. What is Malachi Nelson being told? Now, being a quarterback, you're already worth more than just about everybody else. Even if you've barely played or not, the fact that you're a former 5-star quarterback, you probably have like a base starting point, one would think. But then you consider the players that are involved now. Miami, we know, spends money. USC, we feel like they can go and spend some money as well. And Ohio State certainly can go out and spend some money if they need to. So if you're a Malachi Nelson or whoever else, a Will Howard that might be out there dangling right now, not a bad spot to be in, is one of the few kind of name quarterbacks remaining with more than a couple of blue chip schools looking for blue chip quarterbacks. So, yeah, very interesting sort of musical chairs act going on right now that this is all settled down. I looked at, I guess this is On3's rankings. It's the one that popped up here. And they've got Malachi Nelson now is like the 6th best quarterback of the transfer portal rankings. They've got him above. Now, I don't know how exactly this works, but they've got him listed above the likes of DJU and KJ Jefferson and Will Rogers and a bunch of other guys who played a lot of football. So, I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things, but he's still very highly thought of. And the fact that we just haven't seen a lot of him was you knew something was going to probably have to give there. Like, he's either going to be USC's starting quarterback here pretty soon, or he's probably going to enter the transfer portal. So no surprise that he's there. And, yeah, just a question now of Ohio State, Miami, Will Howard. Like, how do all these remaining quarterback spots play out? That's going to be the fun part of, I guess, the remaining part of the transfer portal that we have here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's big names still that, like, and there's
outside
mystery.
a quarterback.
Yeah, outside a quarterback that are, Evan Stewart, like he's a dude who's like shrouded in mystery and wrapped in a riddle and dripped in a clue. Like,
yeah, he really didn't do A&M any favors. What was that, yesterday or the day before, with his tweet about the medical staff? I caught that as I was leaving here yesterday, and that was a big old stray that the Aggies caught about, wherever I go, I want to just at least know what my injuries are. And it's like, that's pretty damning. Like,
it's a big veterinary school. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, he's not like a horse or a dog or a pig or whatever they would typically look at. But yeah, can we get my man some like real medical information? I have to kind of pause and question that a little bit of like, can that really not be diagnosed? But I don't know. I don't know what the situation there is. That was just kind of a, whoa, wait a second. What did he just throw that grenade at the A&M medical staff? And I guess that's something to follow as well and see what the extent of those are. But yeah, he's still out there dangling and twisting in the wind as well with the transfer portal. Yeah,
so he's going to be interesting. There's some intriguing guys, and we'll get to that in the top 5 today too. We'll talk about some intriguing guys on offense. I think about. All right, Craig, let's talk about the.
I want to say one more thing about Evan Stewart. I do find it interesting, though. It would seem like when he was coming down to his final decision the last time, it was obviously Texas and Texas A&M. A lot of people thought he might go to Texas. He ends up going to A&M. And then when he entered the transfer portal, which I don't think was a huge shock, just given kind of how that recruiting class in particular is just completely fizzled out in College Station, the end of the Fisher era, all that kind of stuff. It's not surprising that guys like him are leaving, but thought when we left before Christmas break, like, yeah, Texas would make a ton of sense, but you come to realize, like, Texas is actually in a better spot where they don't really need Evan Stewart. Like, they can go swing at bigger receivers, if not have guys on campus that are already proven and better, and then you wonder, like, what does Worthy and Mitchell do? But even then, like, they're set up really well that, 2 years ago, you're begging to get Evan Stewart to make a decision for you. Now you're like, he's back. Yeah, we don't really necessarily need him. I mean, you might still go get him, but I don't think it's like a priority for you at this point.
We'll pick up the phone. And actually right now, everybody thought that Texas and Alabama would be the two schools for him. And this could change, but the intel is he's more interested in like USC, Oregon, and FSU, right? Like the three schools he's talked about, just because that's where he feels like he might be a little bit more featured and truthfully, based on you look at what their rosters are and what's going on there, yeah, probably. Texas has got good guys. I mean, they've just got guys.
They got some big decisions to come. To two guys I just mentioned, Worthy and Mitchell, but they've also got a lot of really high-profile recruits that they brought in, and there's guys that can go get in the transfer portal as well. So
yeah. Matthew Golden's coming in.
Yeah, there's one of them.
Jonte Cook exists. I mean, they've got guys. They've got dudes who can go up and get the ball. So I do think one of the things I think will be interesting about Texas and the schools, if you have a transfer quarterback that people know coming in, that probably helps you, or if you have a quarterback coming in back that people know, Quinn Ewers coming back is going to help Texas in massive ways. I mean, the schools we're talking about, USC, Ohio State. Look, Michigan doesn't really know what their quarterback situation is going to be next year because there's some thought that J.J. McCarthy can leave. I'm leaning towards the fact that I think he's coming back. But
you see if they win the Natty and he has a big performance and he might get some advice. But, yeah, I'd lean that way as well.
Yeah, but Quinn Ewers looks like he's coming back, and that's going to set up Texas.
Oh, I'm talking about McCarthy.
Yeah, but McCarthy, but Quinn Ewers looks like he's coming back. That's going to set them up really well. If McCarthy comes back to Michigan, that's going to set them up really well because, of the teams in the championship in the college football playoff, the only one with a new quarterback this year was Alabama. That was it. 3 of the other 4 teams all had returning quarterbacks. All had guys who were built in the system. So I think it's interesting to note that having a guy coming back for another year gives you a leg up on people that maybe, especially now, is more pronounced because you can have a guy for a year and then he can be gone.
Yeah, I mean, Texas in particular, they decided everybody just was like, you know what? That left a bad taste in our mouths. Let's run it back. I mean, it'd be scary good. It would just create such a logjam, though. I think that would be the most difficult part would be like trying to convince the younger guys of like, no, just one more year and then you'll get your turn. But Quinn Ewers coming back is definitely, if that's the case and it looks like it leans that way, yeah, that's a massive leg up for Texas and just the arms race next year to know the type of player and the level of player that you have coming back. I mean, he definitely has left some meat on the bone. He nearly was the hero the other night. I mean, just the late game, the way he played, and certainly Washington gave them some space to move around and find their way back into that game. But at the same time, Quinn Ewers, I mean, there's no denying some of the throws that he makes. And just when he's on, he is as good as anybody out there in the country. And, wonder to what extent he was sort of dinged up the other night. When he got hit, he just seemed to sort of be out of it. There was questions about did he have a concussion or not. He got asked about it in the postgame. Of course, he wasn't going to admit it, even if he did in the postgame. But he just kind of brushed it off as they cleared him and he was okay. But, yeah, I mean, he's a really good player. I still think he's got a lot of room to grow. I think it's a smart decision for him in the long run, especially with the crowded quarterback class to come back, and that sets up Texas really, really well. All it means is just more clamoring for Arch from that crowd for another year. But Ewers, has to stay healthy as well, and I think that another year with Sark would do him some good.
He also hasn't been healthy. So, look, if you want to see Arch, there's a good shot you could see him for a couple games.
Yeah, we saw Malik Murphy start a couple games. So, yeah, odds are we'll probably see Arch there. So, I mean, he knows that even if Quinn Ewers is the starter again, that's just more time for him to mature. And he's probably still going to see the field in some form or fashion. Certainly, maybe in a couple of his earlier games, not necessarily the Michigan game they have on the schedule, which is really exciting leading into next season. But, I think that Texas is set up well regardless of the decisions that are made, but certainly there's some that could sway them in a big direction as far as beating the drums for next year, and Quinn Ewers is at the top of that list, and it does feel like just everything, the post-game, all of that, like he's going to be most likely coming back at this point. It'd be surprising if he didn't.
And he has not necessarily like, and look, he doesn't have to because they're so good, but in his 2 years as the starter, he's not necessarily won games like with a, like Caleb Williams went out and won games for USC, like just doing match in Oklahoma. Like he's done that. Quinn Ewers, the Texas team is so well balanced that there's not many games where you're like, well, this came down to just Quinn Ewers having a superhuman like effort, like Michael Penix did against him the other night. And I'm not knocking Quinn Ewers for that. Like that's more of a compliment to the Texas roster, but he still hasn't had like a lot of those moments where it's like, holy cow.
I think that's what.
And he's on his way up. Like I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's still a younger guy. You'll hear that all the time with him. He's young for his age because he enrolled early in Columbus and then obviously made his way to Texas. We all know that story. But I think the shocking thing to me the other night was just how much better Washington's stars were than Texas's stars. Like their stars shone a lot brighter than UT's stars did, and there were some opportunities, but like Xavier Worthy clearly wasn't healthy. He got dinged up during practices or re-aggravated or whatever, but he was just a non-factor, basically.
He had the one big catch.
He did.
That was huge. But even then, like on that catch, the other 12 games of the year, he probably scores on that one, and he didn't the other night.
Yeah, and that was the one big catch. And then A.D. Mitchell had some moments, but I mean, in comparison to what you saw from Washington's skill guys, the type of some of the plays that they made, that was surprising to me. Just because I look at Texas, I'm just like, look at all that star power, and then that's just a compliment to Washington. It's not even a knock on Texas. It's just like, look at Washington's star power. Like, my God, at quarterback, the brightest star maybe in all of college football coming off of this weekend, certainly. And then that wide receiving core. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, tight end. Running back obviously was a controversial issue the other night, but Dylan Johnson ran really hard, man. I mean, given how banged up he clearly was. So, yeah, that was just impressive. I won't even use that really to compare negatively with UT because that's not my intention, but that's a school, and I think it's too where with Texas, I mean, who are we comparing them to most of the time? To Iowa State and to Oklahoma State and to Oklahoma, who's their closest peer in the conference. That's about to change in a major way in the SEC because now it's comparable to LSU and to Georgia and to Alabama and to Ole Miss and to a number of other schools on any given year, much less, still Oklahoma. But, yeah, that was just super impressive that Washington Stars came out and really shine bright the other night and a little bit brighter than Texas in the biggest game of the year for both of those programs. But, yeah, UT I think is set up really well for next season. A lot will depend on some of the decisions that are made, but I think even if all the guys who have an opportunity to go pro early do go pro, they're still going to be fine because they've recruited pretty well. But, the quarterback carousel, to not have to worry about that is a good feeling to have, and I don't think that they're really worried about it too much, like a Miami, like an Ohio State possibly, and like some of these other schools that are still out there that we've been talking about.
All right, let's take a break right here. When we come back, let's talk about Michigan versus Washington, the matchup, and what that actually means, because this is a battle of styles here that is very different, and it's very intriguing to me. So we'll talk about that next. This is 365 Sports.
During the Start Something New sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco, get incredible deals on our entire inventory selection of new Ram trucks, Jeeps, SUVs, Chrysler sedans, or sporty Dodge. Shop in-store or online today and drive into 2024 with confidence and excitement.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repair too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. Here, Smokey is under the weather, unfortunately, but he'll be back soon.
Has to be a record, right? Coming off of a full 10 days vacation, working one day, and then being on the sick charts.
Yeah. I mean, part of that just comes, and I'm going to say this because he's not here, but I would say it to his face, but he's old.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, there is that part of it. I mean, I don't know. Everybody that I've been around has been sick lately, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sick. Yeah, I was sick a couple weeks ago. I shouldn't have been here for a couple of those, or at least one of those shows, probably. Yeah. And, yeah, he was coughing up a storm during the show yesterday. So I'm all for him taking a day off. I just sitting there thinking, like, dang, all that time we come back, and then it's like back to the sick bed.
It is a bummer, too, because, like, the time that you don't want to be sick is when you're like, okay, I'm ready to be back at work. It's not like, and again.
And my mom was sick this whole past week of Christmas break. Yeah.
So, yeah, my gosh. You've been around a lot of it. So, Jack was sniffling today. He's got a whole bottle of Dayquil over there that he's just been mainlining.
Well, to be fair, anybody who was venturing over to the new arena last night, I think that they probably had a few people not make it over there, myself included, because of the fact when we left yesterday, it was pouring down rain. It was cold. Traffic was a mess, and I'd imagine that's probably where Jack got some of it from, along with all the other germs that are going around during Christmas season. But that was a good way to catch pneumonia last night, was trying to make your way over to the basketball game if you had to walk a good bit.
Yeah, the 100 steps that we have to make from the studio to my car was miserable last night.
Yeah.
I mean, miserable.
Cold and rainy. It's a good way to get sick.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Michigan versus Washington, the actual game, like we've broken down what yesterday, spent great length, happened, in the games to get them there.
I will say, we did not talk nearly as in-depth about Michigan and Alabama as we did about Texas and Washington, and I'm fine with that. I don't necessarily want to revisit a whole lot of that, but what did you just kind of make of that game? I know, and you know what, I heard you say this, and I kind of hesitated yesterday that Florida State belonged, and you could see it by that, and I kind of balked at that because I was taking into consideration the entire field, but certainly with Alabama, that case can be made after watching that game that, yes, Florida State could have gone out there and done similar to what Jalen Milroe did if Tate Rodemaker was playing.
I'm just, like, that's all I'm saying. Like, I don't know if they win, but, like, Michigan is not trying to score 50 points.
Right, exactly.
Like, they're not trying to do that.
If you played Washington, different story.
Yeah, I know. So, like, if you're, like, to me, the argument was, like, just based on what the committee, the line of bullshit that they fed was, okay, it's about Jordan Travis not being there, and it's about the 4 best teams.
Yes.
So if he's not there, that makes them not one of the 4 best teams.
Yes.
Well, the quarterback who's on the team that you selected to go in over them threw for 116 yards. And even though he had some great moments, this year, it isn't about the whole body of work, like all those other things that they say. Well, you're telling me that Tate Rodemaker couldn't have gone and thrown for 116 yards and that Florida State's defense couldn't have held Michigan in check the way that Alabama's defense did? I mean, again, Michigan is not Michigan provides no offensive threats. And I'm not knocking Michigan, but the way their scheme is, they're trying to beat you into a pulp. And they did that really well with Alabama. And I'm not saying they would not have done that with FSU, but as far as the committee's argument for Alabama over Florida State, Alabama did nothing in that game to show that one player, and again, if you're I'm not even looking. If you're in the chat room right now trying to compare what happened in the Orange Bowl, shut up. It's not the same thing. But if you're talking about one player making that much of a difference, well, the guy who's the one player for Alabama made no difference in the game. And it shocked me because Michigan did such a good job of taking out his improvisation. But bottom line is okay, that was your argument. And look, I know your point about it was right. The games were good, but I think
the endings were great.
Yeah. The way the endings happened, the games were good, but I'm just telling you, if it's Michigan and Florida State, I think you're getting pretty much the same game you got.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, yeah, definitely. I mean, Florida State would have had their full complement of players. That's why it's silly to sit there and say, well, look at what happened in the bowl game. Yeah, because that was a bunch of guys who had checked out and decided not to play. But, yeah, all of the guys who had elected to declare for the draft are most likely playing against Michigan in that scenario. So, yeah, it would have been a different story than Georgia. But then, the Georgia question, should Georgia have been in the playoff based on their showing? I mean, and so that's why you get back into the whole who deserved it and who didn't or not. But I think you had a valid point of if the whole thing was about the quarterback spot, then you go see what Jalen Milroe in Alabama did, then, yeah, it doesn't really hold up very well when you start looking at Florida State and going, okay, why did they not get in? And so I don't recall who it was because there's just a flurry of different tweets. But so now Alabama's a 2-loss team and Florida State's still just only a 1-loss team. And, it's just kind of weird how that worked out and really kind of messed up. But, they had their explanation and we went over that at the time.
So is Texas now.
Texas is as well, and yeah, they both got cracks at the title, and then Florida State didn't, and that's going to continue to be a thing for years and years to come, I'm sure. But yeah, that was just something from yesterday that stuck with me, and they're the ones that have to sleep at night, but I'm sure they're still sleeping nice and sound on their $500 pillows or whatever.
And look, again, we don't know what would have happened. I'm just saying that based on the reasons given,
right,
and what actually happened in that game, I don't think it would have been much different.
Yeah.
Does Michigan still win 27-20 in overtime? Maybe. I mean, but look, this was a game that was 20-20 at the end of regulation. So it's not like it was 40-40. I mean, this was not an offensive, fire show. This was just how it was. So anyway, but which brings me to the Washington versus Michigan thing. It depends on who gets to play their game more. Right? Can Michigan do what they've done? And I would lean towards Washington being able to, make their skill players, run Michigan ragged. But I thought that about Alabama, and Harbaugh and crew did a great job of taking Alabama's speed and turning into a non-factor for most of the game.
Yeah, I'm going to boil it down to who plays better on special teams.
Yeah.
After what we saw in those two games. Who is cleaner on special teams? That's going to be my tipping point, I think, most likely in this one, because both teams need to look in the mirror and realize how fortunate they were to have overcome the special teams issues, particularly Michigan. But, I think that it is a contrast of styles, to say the least. That's the easiest takeaway from this game, and having watched these two teams throughout the year. And Michigan's going to want to make it nasty and physical and grind it out, and Washington's going to want to hit big plays that are, wide receivers. And I'm curious to see how much they use Michael Penix's legs, because I think that was something they threw out there the other night. And I know that Smokey mentioned they probably could have done it a lot more than they actually did against Texas, and still been as much, if not even more effective. But what they did decide to do with Michael Penix and flashing his legs, or utilizing that, worked really well. Curious how much of that's involved in the game plan against Michigan, or how much they feel the feasibility is there to try and work that. But yeah, it's going to be an incredible chess match with two really great coaching staffs and rosters. And yeah, it's the flash and splash of the West Coast and the big prolific offense, and then it's like what you think of with the Big Ten and just the mash it out and grind it out and do it in the cold and whatever kind of feel. It's just contrasting styles up and down the matchup when you look at it, and that's going to be fascinating. Here is what does win out, the beef or the speed, so to speak. And I know Michigan's got plenty of speed, and Washington's got plenty of beef as well, as they showed the other night, especially that offensive line, able to hold up as well as they did against Texas. And then when they couldn't, Michael Penix having the ability to get out of a situation that could have been a sack for a lot of other quarterbacks, or could have been a different type of outcome than a big pass play that he would turn it into. But yeah, man, it's two totally different looking football teams from two conferences that are going to be conference mates next year, which is a weird subplot to all of this. But yeah, I think it's a very fun matchup, and I can't wait to see the nerds, the X's and O's, the football junkies, however you want to define them, that really love to get into the film room. I'm very much looking forward to the next couple of days to dive into that a bit more on these two teams, because it is such a contrast of styles.
Can Michigan's defensive line get the kind of pressure on Michael Penix that they got on Jalen Milroe? Washington's offensive line did a great job the other night. Of course, part of that was Michael Penix just solidly, he just recognizes the pass rush and then adjusts so well. And
there was a few times that Texas had him like dead to rights, and it's like, whoop, slipped out of that one. Yeah, they did a great job. Whether it was the offensive line just in general, and they were obviously walking into that game with a lot of accolades, and that led to some of that pregame talk where they're, we're pretty good. Well, what'd you say about us for, Byron Murphy or whatever? And I think Washington walked out of the game not only with a win to sit on, but they could also feel pretty damn good about the way that they held up against the Texas defense. And then, when they had a guy slip through or get through or whatever, Michael Penix showed why, he's a guy who arguably should have been the Heisman Trophy winner. So, yeah, that's going to be fun to see if Michigan, what kind of chaos they can create in the backfield and how Washington adjusts to that.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Gary, I'm not one normally to point out little mistakes and things, but it is such a common thing. We've had the first New Year little flub, and thank you to Sir blah, blah, blah for pointing this out. The date, which we have to fix on our clock bug, was still 2023, which is something, here's the thing, that the next time you write a check, I've had to several times, rip this one up, when
you get the beginning checks, on occasion.
Yeah. The lawn guys, they take a check. Yeah. But yeah, most of the time it's not. But you write something down, or you write the year on something.
Yeah.
I had to sign I do a DocuSign the other day, and I straight up and down 2023, and then it kicked back, and I was like,
well, the thing is, we all have been there, done that, right? Or we all understand that mindset of having to flip the year over in your head. It takes sometimes a couple of days to do that. But yeah, 2024, that's pretty wild. So yeah, thanks for catching that, and probably just made a bunch of people realize, oh wait, have I been doing that the last couple of days? But I'm sure we all have at least once or twice. But yeah, that's a nice correction to point out. And 2024, that's still going to take a little bit of time to sink in.
Look, we are 9 years past where he went in Back to the Future 2.
They're remaking that, right, with Tom Holland, or is that just a fan-made thing that I saw?
Okay. Yeah, that's a fan-made
You never
thing.
know. It's AI, but I was like, well, I guess it would make sense.
I think Bob Zemeckis, the director, has been very protective of it. He's got a lot of controlling rights to it, and won't let them do to that what they've done to so many other things.
And we don't have flying skateboards, at least to my knowledge. Or we have some kind of, I guess there's hoverboard style things, but no flying cars just yet. And so, yeah, I'm sure the Back to the Future folks are a little bit disappointed in us.
Self-drying clothes, that hasn't happened.
Hasn't happened yet.
The one size fits all that morphs to your body, that one's over. That hasn't happened yet. A lot of things were pretty pointless. They haven't gotten to yet. I mean, there are a lot of things that the cell phone thing, they were kind of on, the video chat thing. Mm-hmm. They're kind of on that.
Yeah.
They're kind of on that one.
I need to rewatch that.
Yeah.
Back to the Future.
See what is that? I've got a week next week where my wife is going to be gone. And this is how old man I am now. There are things that she doesn't like to watch that I've got a whole, I'm going to watch Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon and all these things. And you just enjoy it. But I might go back now and watch the Back to the Future trilogy because she won't be there. Be like, haven't you seen that? Like, look, you don't understand.
Yeah. Good
There's
stuff.
comfort in classics. All right, we'll take a break right here. When we come back, I'm going to pose a question to Craig. Would you like a more proven commodity like a Will Howard or one with tantalizing upside like Caden Salter?
Okay.
This is 365 Sports.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. And don't forget, they have full service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, full service bakery with fresh baked kolaches every morning and bread and cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. On January 3rd, 2024, as you now see clearly illustrated on the clock bug up there in the corner.
There you go, people.
Yeah, thank you, Sir blah, blah, blah. You are a Canadian superstar. We love you. The question I posed to Craig, we're going to put on hold for a second because there is a couple things we have not gotten to. Alabama has had a massive wave of players at the portal. One of whom is center Seth McLaughlin, who had a rough game the other night. Including the very last play of the game, was kind of on him. And I hope wherever he goes, he gets his little hitch and his giddy-up fixed because he's a pretty good player outside of the performance he had the other night. And unfortunately for him, it was on a huge stage, and people are now going to know who he is based on that.
And he got kind of the point where, like, some of the snaps that became like every single snap suddenly was under the microscope, and someone was like, well, Jalen Milroe also can like help out, you know what I mean? Like, but suddenly every snap was like under the microscope for him, and some of them I think were a little bit maybe unfair, but no doubt he had some issues the other night.
But they had 9 players to the portal in 15 minutes, which I will tell you just shows the organizational structure at Alabama, which Saban's like, listen, here's the time you come and submit your paperwork. Just come and do it now. I don't care who does what, but just make sure it's at 3:00 today or whatever it is. So yeah, they had that happen, but that's not to be like, look, some of the guys are starters like Seth McLaughlin. Other guys are second or third stringers that are, not fits, I guess, anymore at Alabama or trying to go get paid somewhere else. It's just how it goes. But the big news in the SEC today was that LSU has pretty much dismissed, at least 4 defensive staffers, which is pretty much the whole defensive staff. I mean, I know there's more than that, but the 4 main defensive staffers, including defensive coordinator Matt House, is gone. And before we comment on that, I will pass the microphone over to our producer and LSU fan, Garrett Ross, and his throwback Montreal Expos hat today for comment on the decision by Brian Kelly to fix a defense.
This has been a wonderful day. This is something that definitely needed to happen. I think if you go and look at LSU statistically in the SEC, this is not acceptable. Like it's sacks, interceptions, you're at the middle of the pack. You did lead the league in tackles, but like outside of that, you had your secondary was atrocious. Other than Major Burns, you had nobody on the back end that could really compete and hold up. Sage Ryan did okay in the bowl game there. Your complete mismanagement of Harold Perkins is unacceptable. I think when you got guys like Mekhi Wingo and you have Mason Smith in the middle, there's no reason that those two at LSU shouldn't be. I'm not saying should be on the level as Sweat and Byron Murphy, but they should be able to cause consistent havoc the way those two did. You never saw that. I know injuries were a factor in both of them the past 2 seasons. But, man, this is something where, like, LSU traditionally always has a defense. You always have playmakers there. They just haven't been able to capitalize on it. You're starting to get passed up in conference by programs like Ole Miss, especially you look how Lane attacked the transfer portal this year, all the defensive players they brought in. You're bringing in Texas, who is better than you defensively. Oklahoma can make a case for that as well. So, yeah, they're on a slippery slope. This had to happen. Not only do you do this, so if you're Brian Kelly, you got to find an offensive coordinator as well. There's a lot of problems and a lot of things that need to be fixed on the Bayou heading into next season.
Imagine saying that LSU and Oklahoma had defenses that were on par even a year ago and saying that. But that's a testament to the job Brent Venables has done, and yet also signaling why there are changes in Baton Rouge, and there's been all this fervor for changes on the defensive side in particular. But, that's not, I guess, surprising news. I mean, the first thing that Garrett said was like, yeah, screw that guy. I mean, because you're ready for a change, and LSU fans want to see a change. And so you're right. It's going to be a very interesting offseason down there in Louisiana for Brian Kelly, who has to be feeling some pressure at this point. I mean, they had a great year last year. You have a Heisman Trophy winner this year, but obviously the record is not what you ultimately wanted it to be, and you didn't find yourself in the playoff where you wanted to be with the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. You couldn't find yourself in there. Next year, like that too, like the 12-team playoff, again, how does that change things? Is it going to be the same as like you made a bowl game when you're the LSU head coach? Is it the same as like just making the Rose Bowl or the Cotton Bowl, or how is that viewed in the grand scheme of things? Like, hey, we made the playoff 3 years in a row, but were you like out in the first round every year? Like, that's just going to be really kind of fascinating to see how all of that works. But yeah, I mean, they had a good year. It's just that they were overshadowed by a couple of other schools in their own conference, and then across the country you had other stories that trumped it. And it just was a very up and down kind of season, and so to see them making massive changes is not at all a surprise, because I think that the pressure's been ratcheted up, and people want to see like, hey, you've done some good things here, but we want more. Like, we're expecting more, we're paying for more, we're pooling NIL money for more, and yeah, like you said, Garrett, there's only a couple other great whites now entering the pool here, and so yeah, if you're LSU, you got to be on top of it all, and there's some changes that need to be made clearly after this season on defense, most of all. And so, yeah, that's a move that's going to be huge for them. And now this move to whatever direction they go is going to be fascinating.
Well, and look, he's also going to replace his offensive coordinator because Mike Denbrock went back to Notre Dame. Yeah. So he's got 2 coordinators to hire, and those are things that you can. And look, Brian Kelly's been pretty successful in the past when he's had to replace coaches, at Notre Dame. But this is the first time he's really had to do it at LSU, and this is Notre Dame. Like, he's the all-time winningest coach at Notre Dame. The only thing he didn't do there was win a national title. That's it. That's all he didn't do. He got him in the game once. He got him in the playoff another time. Like, he did everything you would expect a coach at Notre Dame to do, except win that title. At LSU, you've come to a place where, you've had 3 different coaches win the title. So now it's expected, like, every single one of the last 3 coaches has won the title. Every single one. So now you have to do that. This is not like a gap. Like, he had a gap between him and Lou Holtz of when people did it at Notre Dame. There are higher expectations at LSU, and you got to get it right in a hurry, or they're not gonna stand for you. All right, we're gonna have to push that topic back because we got a guest here.
What
the topic? Caden Salter versus.
I do want to make mention real quick though. The Alabama, like the Seth McLaughlin thing, that's not really surprising. I can only imagine what his phone was like after the game the other night, and that was just hard to watch. I mean, he was a big part of the reason why they lost that game. He wasn't the only reason why they lost that game. But that he was under such a microscope and the heat was ratcheted up so high. I'm not surprised to see that move. But another interesting name was Eli Holstein, who picked the Tide over the Aggies back when he was a pretty highly heralded 4-star quarterback. He's amongst that group of Bama players that has now all hit the portal. And so that's the name, just as far as, young quarterback with some skills out there that we talked about all these programs that are needing quarterbacks. I mean, he's not the one that's going to jump to the top of the list, but he's somebody to at least keep an eye on because obviously A&M and Alabama were after him, and he was a pretty highly rated guy. So that one stood out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, look, if you're not it's kind of weird because he went in. Dylan Lonergan was the other highly touted quarterback that went with him. Same kind of star rating and all that stuff. Look, if you're going to go somewhere and you think you're going to sit anywhere, you might as well sit at Alabama for a year before you transfer. Yeah. But now their quarterback situation is cleared up. Look, Jalen Milroe coming back next year. He'll be the starter again. They have Ty Simpson back there. They have Dylan Lonergan, and I'm sure they signed somebody. I'm not remembering right now in this class that they did, but I can't remember what his name was. But heck, why not? So anyway, but why not sit there for a year? But he'll be highly touted in the transfer portal again. When we come back, it's Jed Drenning, West Virginia sideline reporter on their offseason. This is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and Jed Drenning, West Virginia football sideline reporter. And Jed, this year exceeded everybody on the outside. And we've talked about that with you before, about where Neil Brown took this program from having doubters being picked 14th in the Big 12 and all of that to a really good season, and then a dominant win over North Carolina in the bowl game, which, again, bowl games are a hard gauge of things, but with a young team like West Virginia that has a lot of guys coming back, it does feel like there is a lot of positive momentum heading into the offseason, as opposed to nothing but question marks a year ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. First of all, Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year, yeah.
And, and there's a lot of truth to that. And people tend to get particularly excited when you have the straw that stirs the drink behind center, when you have your quarterback returning, as hot as Garrett Green got down the stretch, the fact that he returns, the fact that so many of our offensive pieces that were really helping us to get humming in the last couple months of the season. And for that matter, we have some key pieces back on the offensive line. Now, sure, you're not going to replace Zach Frazier. You're not going to replace Doug Nestor at right tackle. But we have some talent coming back at the point of attack as well. We have Wyatt Milam at left tackle. We have Tomas Rimac at left guard. We have another returning starter, Jaquay Hubbard. We have Brandon Yates, who played center in the bowl game for us. So a lot of pieces back up front as well. And enough interesting pieces on the defensive side with what we're trying to do in the portal to really get excited about this.
So, Jed, going and winning that Duke's Mayo Bowl, I mean, it was obviously great to end the season with a win. It was great to see Neil Brown. You get mayonnaise dumped on him. That was a big to-do, obviously, on social media. But just what did that mean to finish with a win and to finish out a strong season on a strong note and beat a team the quality of North Carolina? How important was that to finish that way?
Well, it definitely was the exclamation point at the end of a season that exceeded most expectations, right? I mean, you never know what you're getting. Like we stepped into that situation against North Carolina. Mac Brown has recruited incredibly well for a long time, 5 straight top 25 classes. So they were losing and without a lot of key pieces, no doubt about it. But what they did was they inserted a lot of youth into the lineup, and the youth that they were playing, whether it was their freshman quarterback or whether it was some of the other freshmen in key spots, they were excited to be there. And maybe that wouldn't have been the case with some of their veteran starters who just a couple months ago were ranked in that top 10 when they were parked at 6-0. So we really didn't know what to anticipate. It was kind of a tricky bowl game to prep for. So the fact that we don't think we played our best football game, but we played well enough to take care of business in all 3 phases. And make some critical plays and some explosive plays on the offensive side. It took us a while to get the run game going until the second half. Special teams-wise, Beanie Bishop takes advantage of an injury and steps in to return some punts for us. And I was excited for Beanie to show NFL scouts what he could do returning punts in addition to being a consensus All-American at corner. And then on the defensive side, guys, we were on the field the way that first half unfolded for 39 snaps in the first half. And even in the third quarter, North Carolina kept controlling the football game from a snap count standpoint, and the defense kept digging down and brought their best when we needed to turn that corner at the most in the third quarter. So it was a 3-phase effort, not complete, not for the time capsule, but a great way to finish the season. And it definitely would have tasted differently, wrapping things up. Falling short in a game like that as opposed to coming out on top. And by the way, Neil is not a fan of mayonnaise. So that made that I was following him up to the corner. They have this little carve out in this corridor where they do this. It's kind of ritualistic. And it very much had the feel when he came off the stage, as I followed him to the corner toward that corridor. I've said this many times since. I felt like I was following John Coffey up the Green Mile. I mean, It had an execution feel, a mayonnaise execution feel to it. But But boy, oh boy, it was a fun way to end the season.
Yeah, there is not many more like divisive condiments than mayonnaise. Like you either are totally fine with it or you totally hate it. Like it's kind of like being like it's like the Dallas Cowboys of condiments. You're either completely obsessed with it or you completely hate it. Nobody's indifferent about the Cowboys. Nobody is.
To your point, my wife likes mayo, but she hates Miracle Whip. And I'm like, well, I can flow with either, but and guys, what they do, I don't know if it's some process to help that much mayonnaise, but maybe they throw several extra gallons of vinegar in there, but it has a smell to it.
Oh,
what they dump on the coach, that there were people filming the mayo trail because Neil literally had mayo leaking off of him as he was making his way back to the locker room, and the stench and the smell because of the added ingredients to it. It was something else now.
Yeah, because it's got to fall. Like if you just had a regular like
plop,
it was you'd hold it there forever and have to wait on gravity. So Jed, as they head to this offseason, you mentioned the portal, and they, in the early days of the portal, I think nobody was probably victimized in larger numbers than West Virginia was. And Neil Brown has navigated that storm in the last couple of years pretty well. How do you feel has he, like now, pointing the ship in the direction of knowing what he wants and how to get it out of the portal?
Well, in the early days, like a lot of programs, I felt like we were somewhat ambushed by it. We kind of had to wrap our heads around it. And what's really helped along the way is the trust. I mean, we've had to get to the point with the Country Roads Trust where it's at least stabilized things to give us a puncher's chance to make some offers, some competitive offers. Whereas 2-3 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the case. We weren't in position to do that. And one of the guys that has made a tremendous difference for us, it's a name that would be familiar to folks down in your neck of the woods, Drew Fabianich, who had that long stretch with the Cowboys in their scouting department. Drew Fabianich spent 1 year at Auburn as their general manager before Brian Harsin was jettisoned last year. Well, we gained from that in that Drew became West Virginia football's first ever GM for us. So he stepped up here, and he's kind of running point on that. He's the guy who is scouting what's available in the portal. He's a guy who's studying our roster, understanding the needs, understanding what it takes to win in the Big 12. And I tell you what, he's found some value. He really has. I mean, the addition of Drew has been, it might not get the fanfare, but in my estimation, that has been a huge part of what we're trying to do.
Jed, when you look at who's already exited and who's already declared to be coming in next year, what kind of, I guess, do you turn your eyes towards when it comes to this roster and any potential movement one way or the other as far as being important heading into next season or this offseason?
Well, as you guys know, this is wave one. Wave two is going to come in May. Mm-hmm. So it's not a finished product, and nor will it be really till August, right? That's how things have changed. But we've addressed a lot of things on the back end. In other words, we have some critical pieces returning because we had such a deep rotation on the defensive line. That was one of the pleasant surprises with this defense was there were times we went as many as 8, sometimes even 9 men deep in that rotation. Now, we've been hit with a couple portal losses there, but we return a lot of talent and a lot of youth that I think is ready to take the next step as well. And we have some critical youth in the linebacker room, and we've also helped from a portal standpoint there. But the place defensively that we've really been most aggressive is on the back end. And I don't think we're done yet. And when you look at what we had to do offensively, there weren't as many needs because of what we do stand to return, but we're still picking and choosing some spots that we do think will help us. And again, you guys touched on it. In years past, we might not have been as happy with where things stood here the first couple of days of January after the first portal window closed. But right now, I mean, you're always going to have some attrition. That's going to be the case everywhere. I mean, I looked at the national championship game. I mean, we've talked all year long about how this Alabama, not the national championship, the CFP semifinal, how this Alabama offensive line has struggled. It was very un-Nick Saban-like. They gave up the second most sacks in the SEC. Every time I watched Bama, it didn't feel like when I was watching them offensively, it was a Nick Saban offense. Well, when you look at what they lost on that offensive line in the portal, this is Alabama. This is the bluest of the blue bloods. They lost a 5-star tackle, as we know, to TCU. They lost 2 other 4-star tackles. They lost a 4-star interior offensive line. These are all freshmen. These were guys that would have played for Alabama this year but aren't there. So even Alabama is impacted by it. Every program is impacted by it, just in different ways. And, of course, West Virginia is not beyond reproach when it comes to that. But in terms of what we have lost versus what we've gained, this is probably the best spot that we found ourselves in since this new climate with the portal.
Based on the way that they finished, the teams coming in, how do you feel about them positioned for what is now the new Big 12?
Yeah, kind of exciting, right? I think the one thing when I look at this new league, and that's not to say that wasn't the case in years past with Texas and Oklahoma, because it certainly was, but I think you're going to have more parity maybe than any other league. Some of the other leagues might be a little more top-heavy. But when you look at the Big 12, I don't know if that's the case, because a compelling argument can be made for so many different teams that would be among those top 2 or 3 if you want to categorize it that way. It's so difficult to forecast what that might look like. And quite frankly, the biggest thing that I see, especially when I expect improvement out of the 4 newbies this past year, we realize how stabilized the newcomers next year already are, how fortified they already are coming in. But, guys, there's really no empty chairs. And it's going to be difficult. You better strap it on and bring it each week because there's no layups. It's going to be highly competitive. The parity is going to be incredible. I think it's just going to be a function of the most consistent football team has a chance to be the best football team because there's going to be such a high degree of parity in this league.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me next August who's the best team in this league, I have no idea. None.
Yeah, that's going to be difficult. It really isn't. And I think, like you guys talked about, in a past life, maybe we could have looked at the polls and used that to project something, but not really. I mean, I was sitting there trying to forecast, like, maybe if we have a good enough showing, West Virginia can land in the final top 25. But, it's probably a stretch because there were 8 teams getting votes outside the top 25. We were not one of them. So all the things that have to cut our way. We were getting some votes in the coaches poll. But I do fully expect West Virginia and several others in the new Big 12 to be in the top 25 preseason from a preseason standpoint. And we open with Penn State, so we're going to hit the ground running August 31st. And it's exciting. I mean, there's already a tremendous amount of buzz. That's already nearly an impossible ticket to get in Morgantown. But, I'm looking forward to some really high-quality football in this new league with this new landscape.
So, Jed, as Paul pointed out, and we've kind of mentioned throughout, I mean, there was a lot of heat heading into this season. That chair that Neil Brown was sitting on was turned up pretty good, and obviously he's cooled that down immensely. But how would you describe just kind of the general feel? And I know you're speaking from more of a media standpoint and all of that, but you also get a gist of the fans. Has a lot of that just, I guess, wondering and questioning, has that kind of died down with what Neil Brown did this year from the fan base, or is it just kind of like fan bases are and there's always something that is going wrong?
A little bit of both. I think by and large, most of it has people, they turned a corner and they're on board with where we're heading. But fans can be stubborn. And I think sometimes, what was the name of the owner in Major League that kept pulling for the team to lose? I told people, I'm like, don't be her. All right. Don't be that gal. I mean, don't pull for us to lose just to prove yourself right. I mean, that's a miserable way to exist, right? I like to live in hope. And I said that all year, even before we started turning this corner. And I think that's how most people have kind of approached this. I mean, fans can be stubborn sometimes. So there's some people who just don't want to admit that maybe they were wrong. And I try to explain to people, I'm like, look, the truth of it is this. It's not an excuse. It's the reality in which we exist. This is not the job Neil Brown was hired to do in 2019. This is not it. I mean, the job that he took over in 2019 was to take over a program with a tremendous amount of brand equity, the 15th winningest program of all time. Yes, the cupboard was there, but Neil embraced that. He leaned into that, and he's like, hey, give me 2 or 3 recruiting cycles, and I'll do what West Virginia's done for the last 100 years. I'll take undervalued assets that are 2 and 3 stars, that are ticked off with a chip on their shoulder. I'll develop them for 4 to 5 years and produce more NFL talent than we have any business ever producing. And then all of a sudden, his second year, here comes COVID. And then shortly after that, 2021, here comes the portal. Here comes NIL. I try to explain to folks, college football 1.0 was an amazing game, but it's over. It was Rutgers, Princeton, 1869, all the way up to 2021. We now reside in college football 2.0. Stop explaining to me how Major Harris took us to the national championship. That was college football 1.0. Major Harris, quite frankly, there's probably a good chance he'd been a heck of a quarterback for Ohio State if he played in this era. I mean, how would we have kept Steve Slate after the Sugar Bowl as a true freshman breaking Tony Dorsett's record? Can you imagine trying to hang on to Tavon Austin and the rest of your roster? It's just, you have different challenges that no previous coach has ever experienced. So Neil has had to adjust on the fly. And as you guys said, early on, we were kind of ambushed, but we lost a lot of talent. There was a lot of attrition. There was a lot of hemorrhaging. But to the extent that there was 3-4 years ago, there really isn't now. So I think he's pivoted. He's adjusted on the fly. And I think he's done a great job at doing it. So that's why I think people need to be excited as to where this is heading.
Jed Drenning, West Virginia football sideline reporter. Jed, thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys.
There you go. One of our favorites, Jed Drenning. And look, West Virginia, that first year of the portal, like it was like they were the store that was open 24 hours. And, Neil Brown's like, hold on, wait a minute. How does this work here where, all of a sudden all these guys are leaving and doing this, and then you have NIL on top of that. Yeah, I do think that there's a lot of times where you need to give some guys some space to figure things out because of how rapidly it's changed.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that I asked that at the end because I think he gave a really great response, and it's something that I think a lot of fan bases need to keep in mind of, this is not what it was even a couple of years ago. And that whole being eye to eye with just about everybody and everything kind of being pretty fair, that's all off the table now. Like the people who had the advantages have way more of an advantage now than they ever had before. And they're able to use that in a variety of different ways to their advantage. It's not exactly what it used to be. And I think that's a really great way that he sort of explained that and positioned that. And I think that's something that probably everybody, including myself, needs to re-listen to on occasion and realize, this is not an era anymore where this team can compete with Bama on pretty much everything, or you're at least looking more eye to eye. Like now there's levels to it, and there was always sort of levels before, but now the levels are very clear how much of a disparity there is between Team A or Team C, and that's just part of the deal. And he's right. I mean, any of the players that he mentioned and dozens of other great West Virginia players, they're getting poached out of the portal by Ohio State or by Alabama or whatever. Like Tyke Smith got ripped away from him right away. Just a couple years ago now at this point, who was arguably one of their best players. So that's the world we live in now. And that's another thing that these coaches have to contend with. And if you're not those that are at about 10 schools, then you're always going to be fighting an uphill battle. And West Virginia is one of those that, even with all of their history and all of their wins and the winningest program to never have won a national title in football and all those things, there still is a much steeper hill to climb for Neil Brown now than there was when he first took that job. And that goes for most of the jobs across the country. So I do think that needs to be taken into account. And that was a good batch of stuff there from Jed. And I'd never thought about the watering down, I guess, or the liquefying of the mayonnaise for the big post-game celebration. Yeah. But now that he brought that up, it makes sense that you would have to do that because it is very liquidy, and that has become one of the, better? I don't know, but one of the more interesting bowl season celebrations, if you will, because people are terrified of it. They're like these grown men who go out there for 90 minutes and we do all this. And then all of a sudden the mayonnaise bucket comes out and they're terrified, like little kids. And you know what? Based on his explanation of it, I don't really blame him. Walking around with liquidy mayonnaise rolling off, that does not sound appetizing to me at all.
Vinegar and
vinegar, yes.
all that. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, And then here's the thing is people are going to stop and want to ask you questions how does the mayonnaise feel? And my thought would be listen, guys, it sucks.
Yeah.
I'm if you want to wait, give me 15 minutes. I will come out here without mayonnaise all over me, and I will explain everything you want to know. I'll tell you things you didn't think I would answer, but just please, God, let me get in this shower right now. There is, But
at the same time, it icks so good. It's so icky, but at the same time, after a win,
it's great.
For a fan experience, it's great. But I'm sure Neil Brown would rather have been just soaked from the ice cooler as opposed to the mayonnaise batch that was put together. But that was a nice win. I mean, like you said, North Carolina wasn't operating on all cylinders, but who cares? You go out there and win number 9 and finish the season on a strong note, and that's what West Virginia did. And now they'll be one of those schools that you have to look at very closely when you're determining your preseason Big 12 rankings and sort of where they fit in the grand scheme of things, because they'll be rolling in with some momentum, barring anything unforeseen this offseason. So a far departure from where we started the 2023 football season with Neil Brown and now where we ended. So good for him.
All right, you've done sideline for a lot of high school football games in your career. Have you ever gotten nicked by a ice bath or Gatorade bath?
No.
You and I've noticed, like we've done some games where it's been that time.
Mm-hmm.
You've been very.
I'm aware of it.
You're aware. You're very stealthy about
right
it.
To the coach, right next to the coaches that's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. I have only got my arm one time. Gatorade got my arm one time, and the reason I didn't think it was happening is it was a first round playoff game. It was a first round.
Mm.
So
I guess they hadn't won one in a while.
It was Robinson.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I was doing a Robinson game. And so the first round playoff game. So in I was very young. And in my estimation, I was like, well, I mean, like you're not going to give the Gatorade, like they got to go play 3 other games for the Gatorade bath comes, you know? And so I didn't even think about that. And so I was interviewing the coach. And of course it's kids doing this. So they had no regard for my microphone sitting out there. And I saw them coming, but I didn't see it until the Gatorade was already like coming out of the thing, and it got all over my arm, and I could not wait. Like just my arm was as sticky as it ever been. I tried to go in I was at Floyd Casey Stadium. I tried to go in the bathroom and wash it off, but there wasn't enough soap in the thing to really do anything. Plus it's the
motion sensor.
Sensors soap. So
what a rip off that. You better pay really low money for those motion sensors, because you definitely don't get your bang for your buck if you're paying anything reasonable for those half the time.
So I'm trying to I remember thinking of that, like the mayonnaise being on you like that, covering all of you. And then the 45 minutes to an hour I had Gatorade sticky arm, and how I just had I have to shower when I get off an airplane.
Right,
I don't. Yeah, the ick was just. Ugh.
Yeah, now imagine vinegary mayonnaise. He at least probably got a shower right after that, so that was probably one of the better showers, I would think. After a post-game celebration was to get the Mayo Bowl remnants all off you. But yeah, that was a good win. It's a fun little celebration there that they have. I think maybe only the Pop-Tarts Bowl got more attention just for its activities than the Mayo Bowl did, because there was so many tweets that I saw at that time when that game was wrapping up about the celebration and Neil Brown's hesitancy and not wanting to be a part of it. I think neither coach, I think Mac Brown's losing this game on purpose just so he doesn't have to get dumped with mayonnaise, and you're like, maybe he is. I don't know. But no, that was a nice send-off for this class of Mountaineers, and they've got something to build on. But it is a much different world now, and reasonable expectations are hard to ask for sports fans just in general. But there are going to be higher expectations, that's for sure, for the Mountaineers, and they will not be voted last in next year's Big 12. By no means will they be viewed the same way they were this past season, and that's because of what they were able to go out there and show.
Yeah, I would be like, can you give me the chocolate milkshake bowl or something like that it's not going to bother me so much? And
yeah, that'd be pretty gross eventually as well. But yeah, there's nothing really you can do that I think is not going to end up with you needing a shower. But mayonnaise would be up the top of the list. Just let's just not do that one.
Yeah, no matter if I like it on a sandwich or not, or I like a nice garlic aioli. There's no way I wanted it on my hair and my face. And eating it, when they do the thing in the booth where they give them hey, dip this Oreo in there and all that, I got to credit those guys that are doing the game for taking this like a champ.
I'm not doing that. I'm not eating Oreo dipped in mayo or whatever. No, I'm absolutely not.
No,
I'm not doing that for the team. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, to me, and I'm a big fan of actually Duke's mayo itself. I like that one. But it goes on sandwiches. It's ingredients in something. That's what mayonnaise is for. It's not a standalone condiment. Mm-hmm. It's not. You shouldn't just eat it on your own. When we come back, Barry Crawford, Paul, better than winning the Sun Bowl. Imagine a nuclear explosion going off on your arm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk BYU with Jake Hatch and what their offseason is going to look like. Later on, we'll talk about Kansas State. A couple different things going on there. we'll get John Kurtz's opinion on Will Howard and where he's headed next. And we'll get his opinion on Matt Wells, the new offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach that's there to replace Colin Klein. That's a really interesting hire there. And I feel like it's a nice personality fit. Having spoken to both those coaches, I think they're going to jive well together. This is 365 Sports.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected. Get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and our good friend Jake Hatch. The Zone Sports Network, BYU, also has his podcast as well. And Jake, this is an interesting offseason for everybody in college football. It is one, particularly for the Big 12 and for teams that, join the Big 12 this year. When they join, thinking it's going to be one thing, and then now it's an even bigger thing. And recruiting in BYU's own geographic area got maybe even tougher with the Western teams coming in, especially their rival in Utah. So what's it been like now knowing that it's a 16-team league and 4 of those teams, you're really swimming in the same waters for the same guys?
I think BYU understands there's extra competition with those, especially Utah being right there next door to them. But I think BYU's happy to have them in the conference because it gives them some more geographic rivals. You've got Utah up the road. You got the Arizona schools playing right away. You got Colorado just across the mountain range in the Rocky Mountains. So the good news for BYU is those other schools they have history with, and it just allows them to have some more geographic rivals rather than having to travel every time they go to play a conference game.
Jake, what was it like to not have a postseason, especially getting 5 wins pretty early on and just seeing the Cougs sort of flounder down the stretch in conference play? What was sort of the reaction to all that surrounding the program? And what was, how would you summarize the feel as the season closed on how the debut in the Big 12 went?
I got to say it was a little weird because it's only the second time they haven't gone bowling in 20 years for BYU. So, yeah, it was a little strange not to have them in the postseason, but you're right. When you start out the season, you're 5-3 at one point. It felt almost like inevitable that BYU would pick up a sixth win, but as you mentioned, they end up losing all the 5 straight to end the season and find themselves sitting home for the holidays. And I can tell you in the conversations I have with players and coaches around the football program since the season ended, they are extremely hungry. They don't want to have this bolus drought extend any further than 1 year. So they're hard at work in recruiting, obviously trying to upgrade the talent base for BYU, but at the same time, they are expecting next year to have an improved team and at least get to 6 wins at minimum.
So, Jake, how do they approach this offseason? What's the job one? What are the things they have to do to build back that team that Kalani Sitake was so used to?
Well, the number one thing, they got to find out what they're going to do at quarterback because Keaton Slovis was the 1-year rental as a grad transfer coming into BYU, and he finished the season injured. He didn't play the final 4 games due to an elbow injury, and BYU brought in Jake Retzlaff, who they were very high on as a junior college transfer from last year to finish the season out, but he ultimately went 0-4 and had moments where he looked okay at quarterback, but the big question this offseason, I think, number one, is who is your quarterback going to be in 2024? BYU knows that they need to have elite quarterback play, or at least above average quarterback play, if they want to get back to the bowl season. So they're looking at their quarterback situation. The other thing they're looking at is just overall building up the talent base of their depth. If you look at their most recent recruiting cycle, like the early signing window, BYU did a very, very heavy emphasis on defense, particularly in the front seven. They struggled against the run down the stretch during the season. I think the coaches noticed they got worn down. So they made a heavy emphasis on bringing in defensive linemen and linebackers. And so far, their recruiting class is very heavy on defensive players. So, they need to figure out what they're doing at quarterback, get an upgrade there if at all possible. They've been doing very, very heavy work in the transfer portal, trying to find an option there. And then at the same time, making sure that defense is going to be able to hold up better against the run, especially.
Yeah, and that's normally an adjustment that every new team has to make. The ones that have joined the Big 12 in the past is definitely the line play and kind of getting the depth and whatnot needed there. In terms of recruiting in general, I know there was at least a little bit of a bump early on with the move to the Big 12. Has that dissipated? Are they seeing still an upward trajectory? How would you describe just sort of the recruiting waters right now in Provo?
If you go by just the recruiting rankings, I know that those are they're an interesting debate to go trust those, but BYU has their best rated class right now in the 2024 cycle that they've had in 3 and 4 years. So yeah, they are seeing a continued bump, and the hope is they can start to put together some results on the field that'll yield more results in the recruiting sphere. Now, we all know BYU has its unique recruiting restrictions, having the honor code and the fact that it's a church-affiliated school, etc. But BYU's coaches know that they have to have more talent on the field. It became very, very evident in the final 5 games of the season that they lost that they just did not have the talent they needed to compete at the Big 12 level that they want to compete at. So they are doing their best to try and find the best talent they can, but it is going to take some time for them to really get to the level they want to get to. But yes, they are seeing a bump, and it's continuing to improve, it feels like, every year.
What quarterbacks do you think fit them that are available in the transfer portal?
Well, that's an interesting debate because you look at all these quarterbacks. I saw Jaden Mayava from UNLV, who obviously led the Rebels to a 9-win season, which is just incredible down there for Las Vegas. He seems like a guy who would be a tailor-made fit for BYU because I think they realized that Keaton Slovis, being a pocket passer, just did not fit their offense ideally. The offense that Aaron Roderick prefers to run needs to have a dual-threat quarterback. So if you're looking at that, Jaden Mayava from UNLV seems to fit the bill. I thought early on that some guys like Daquan Finn, who ultimately landed at Baylor, would have fit the bill for BYU. The one thing BYU is going to be going up against is, as you guys are well aware, and we're all well aware, NIL, and how much money do you have in your war chest to be able to offer up to these quarterbacks? It's not out of the realm of what Matt Rule said from Nebraska. $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million is what it's going to cost to have an elite quarterback. The concern I have is, does BYU have the war chest big enough right now to be able to afford to pay a top-flight quarterback like that in the transfer portal? And based on the fact that they have not landed somebody of that caliber yet, that tells me that they are not in that same stratosphere yet.
So, I mean, that is a little bit surprising, Jake, though, because I mean, I do think that there's money running through there. Is it just not running to the NIL just yet?
That's my assumption is that there are corporate sponsors and some of these big boosters who they probably are contributing money to the university itself and to the football program and the athletic department, but they've probably not caught the vision of what NIL and what their collective BYU has two. They have one called Coup Connect, the other called the Royal Blue Connect Collective. I don't think they've caught the vision of what NIL is ultimately going to need to be for BYU to compete. I think some of these universities have caught the vision. I would point to Baylor in particular as one that has seemed to have caught the vision, and we'll see if it yields the results that Baylor wants as they try and bounce back from a disappointing year. But BYU's boosters, I think, have not necessarily caught the vision yet, and I think eventually they will, but I'm afraid that it may come a little too late.
All right, Jake, turn into the hardwood. Pretty nice start there for men's basketball. 12-1, got conference play kicking off this weekend. You know, when BYU joined the conference, there was as much talk about, basketball probably as there was football in some cases. But what's the excitement level surrounding this team? And what would you kind of describe as the vibes here 13 games in? And what's the excitement level subsequently for kicking off what should be a terrific conference slate starting this Saturday?
Well, I think BYU fans are ecstatic. They've had about as good a start as you could hope for in their Big 12 tenure in basketball. They experienced in the 12-1. They're ranked 12th in the country. They got a huge start to Big 12 play, obviously coming up. They'll be headed to Baylor next week, but they started off with Cincinnati on Saturday, and that'll be a pretty crazy crowd. I'm expecting a sellout, 18,000 plus fans there at the Marriott Center in Provo for that one. But yeah, Mark Pope and his squad, I think based on the expectations, they were picked 13th in the preseason poll by the media, and I was not surprised by that in the least. And to come out and have played the style of basketball they have played, they have found themselves with a bona fide NBA draft prospect and a guy like Jackson Robinson, who I would expect is in the running for Sixth Man of the Year in the conference this year. It's been a very, very fun start to the basketball season for BYU fans. And I think considering the expectations Cougar fans had relative to football with regards to men's basketball, this is about as excited as you're going to find for BYU fans, and they're hoping that it's going to carry on here in the Big 12 play.
Did the hype train start when they beat San Diego State?
Yes, it did. You could kind of feel it start. Okay, they took down San Diego State, who obviously had made that run to the Final Four last year. Now, it was a different San Diego State, and we all get that, but that is still a very, very strong program. And then BYU from that point seemed just to really take flight. And they're off and rolling. Yeah, they did lose to Utah in their only true road game of the non-conference slate. You never want to lose to your rivals, but BYU had maybe their worst performance of the non-conference slate when they went up to Salt Lake City in that game. So I think Cougar fans are very excited to see, okay, where can this team ultimately land in the Big 12? I don't think they have the expectations or dreams that they're going to be the Houstons or the Kansases of the world, which are Final Four contenders. But I think that they are expecting that BYU will finish in the top half of the conference and find themselves dancing come March.
First conference game in the new arena for Baylor, as a matter of fact, is BYU.
Correct. They're excited to go see this new place. Apparently, it looks like an absolutely incredible environment. Just 7,500 people, but those fans, they are right on top of that court. It looks like
it's long overdue. It's long overdue for the basketball programs to have that kind of a venue. Jake, thanks so much for hopping on with us today. Appreciate it. You're always a great guest to go to. Please look, if you're a BYU fan, you're not listening to Jake Hatch. You're missing out. So Jake, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So. They're an interesting one. Like I have a feeling, like football wise, they might be in kind of that West Virginia position next year where we don't know much about them and they're going to pick last. But I like their coach a lot. I like Kalani Sitake. I think he can build a roster pretty well. They can get things done. But like I said, if they haven't caught the way to do NIL yet, which my contention is the ones who are good at it now were the ones who were always doing it.
Yeah.
They didn't, all they had to do was just be like, oh, we don't have to pretend like this guy doesn't exist anymore. You can just talk to him. Those are the ones who did it. And the ones who were like, well, we just can't afford, to do things to that level. Not that people weren't, doing things under the table everywhere, but there were some pretty ornate, I'm sure, things going on in the background, a lot of different places that were just, when it was made legal, was just like, okay, well, this is easy. This is what we've been doing for 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think some had already kind of known the gist of it, and probably just, I guess the biggest adjustment was being able to do it out in the open basically now for some of them. But yeah, for some others, it's brand new territory or pretty fresh territory, I think, in a lot of cases, and it does take some time, but, I mean, it's also been, 2-3 years now going on this, so if you haven't gotten it together by now, like, what's it going to take for you to be able to get it together? So maybe it's the fact that you missed a bowl game, and it's been the first time in a while you haven't been able to go and celebrate a postseason berth or go and see a postseason bowl game. So that was disappointing, especially being at 5-3 at one point. Having a full month to just get one win and not being able to do that was massively disappointing. But, yeah, I mean, they've got a few tweaks to make. They can definitely upgrade at quarterback, definitely can get better just in general offensively, and can be better on defense. I mean, they can look pretty much everywhere, but as he pointed out, the trenches, and that's definitely a top bullet point, because that's what you saw when TCU joined or when West Virginia joined, or whoever's kind of joined along the way. You've always pointed towards those lines in particular as being the biggest adjustments for some schools, and so I think you're going to hear that from UCF and BYU and Houston and gosh, I always forget one school. Houston, UCF, BYU, and Cincinnati. Yeah. And I know Cincinnati has some pretty good talent there on the D-line, but that's typically where teams making that move have had to really put their focus in after the first year. So we'll see how they do with that and the rest of the transfer portal these next few months. But, yeah, certainly weird to not make a bowl game. And yet, hey, you can flip the page and turn right into what should be a pretty exciting basketball season, because they are borderline top 10, got some big-time matchups coming up, and they're a good team. So they should be a great addition in that regard for the hoop side of things, and looking forward to seeing how they do in conference play.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's take a break right here. When we come back, let's do the topic. Are you more intrigued, like if you're Ryan Day or a coach like that, are you more intrigued by Will Howard, a steady Eddie, Mr. Reliable, or do you get tantalized by the prospect of someone that's athletically dynamic like a Caden Salter? This is 365 Sports.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Welcome back. 365 Sports. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. Smokey is under the weather. He'll be back soon, though. Hopefully tomorrow. All right, so the question I posed to Craig about an hour ago that we're finally getting to, because we had some news to get to before that. If you are Ryan Day or any coach that is looking for a quarterback, and you've got your choice between a steady Eddie like Will Howard, who's won a conference title, who's played a lot of football, who's won a lot of games, or a guy like Caden Salter, who was a P5 talent, coming out, he was at Tennessee. He had some off-the-field troubles. He's clearly gone and righted the ship at Liberty, and he's a dynamic kind of a player with passing and running the ball. Are you more intrigued by him to pass up a guy that you can pretty much know that like you've got a baseline in Will Howard?
Yeah, give me Caden Salter. Let's shake it up a little bit. I think we've seen Will Howard pretty much maximized at this point, and I don't think we've fully seen that with Caden Salter. We certainly haven't seen it at the level that he would be bumping up to because Liberty didn't play anybody that was on par with who he'll likely be facing in the first month of the season, much less the entire run wherever he does end up, which is going to be a power conference, one would imagine. So, yeah, give me Caden Salter. He's a real dual threat. I know Will Howard can run a bit as well, but Salter's numbers, when you add in what he can do on the ground, are just mightily impressive. And, again, you take it with a little bit of a caveat of they didn't really play anybody that was really all that good. And then they finally ran into Oregon and things got really nasty really quick. But, I mean, he rushed for over 1,000 yards and had 12 touchdowns on the ground. Pretty much every game of the year he had whatever number of passing yards and a touchdown or two or three or four or five. And then he had almost, it felt like every single week, 100-plus rushing yards and at least one or two touchdowns on the ground. I mean, nearly every single game. So, there is the trade-off as far as the competition that both have faced. But I think if I'm just rolling the dice and I need to spruce up my quarterback room and I'm looking to make the biggest splash, I do think I go Caden Salter over Will Howard because I think there's a bit more untapped potential there with Caden Salter and a little bit more of a dynamic playmaking ability, if that makes sense. And that's not a knock on Will Howard. It's just that I think knowing what we know about both, my only question with Caden Salter would be just – how has he matured? Because he did pretty much get in trouble right away at Tennessee. I don't know the details of what all even happened there, but it wasn't just once. It was twice, I believe, he got in trouble. I think one of them might have been – I don't want to speculate because it was a long time ago that I even remember hearing about it. But he found himself in trouble that doesn't need to be finding himself in. And then he goes to Liberty. He's been there for the past 3 seasons and has seemingly stayed out of trouble. Like, I don't know, though. Okay. I don't ever hear about Liberty in general.
Here is his charges.
Okay.
Simple possession.
Right.
And driving without a license.
Okay, I thought there was something else that was involved.
So that's what he was charged with.
Right.
So if there was something else involved there, but as far as what he was charged with was that, which
I'm referring to what was, I think, maybe the first or the second incident at Tennessee that was a little bit more higher up charge-wise, or would have been, than that. And that's why I don't want to try to talk about it too much because I don't remember exactly, but I feel like there was something else that happened, and that I guess maybe he didn't get charges for. But regardless, he found his way getting booted off of Tennessee and having to go to Liberty, and had a really nice run these past couple of seasons, this year in particular. And so that's just my only question, and that's not trying to bog down there. It would be like, has he matured and has he grown up? It sure appears that he has. Mm-hmm. He was clearly a leader for Liberty. But if you can check that box pretty quickly, then yeah, I mean, from a player standpoint, give me the untapped potential of Caden Salter on this level versus what we kind of already know what we're getting with Will Howard at this point, especially when, as we pointed out during the commercial break, I mean, Will Howard got basically jumped by superstar potential laden freshman in Avery Johnson. So it wasn't just some bum off the street that rolled in and just beat him out, or some walk-on quarterback, or some low-level three-star that beat out a guy who's the potential Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year in the discussion at one point following their Big 12 championship run last year. So there's that to it. But I think Salter's got a lot more that we haven't seen just yet, and that's where I would lean.
Yeah, I do, and I've heard me talk about this before. I love
especially in this go for it or it's all or nothing type of world. Like, it's all season to season anyways. So if you're going to go for it, like, give me what Salter might be able to do versus what I kind of figure we know Will Howard's going to do.
I also liked the idea of guys being able to go to a Liberty and then prove that they can play ball and then get the shot that and look that he honestly squandered getting arrested.
Right. Started at Tennessee,
two times.
Started there.
He didn't even get to it was after spring ball. He enrolled in January, got arrested a couple times and was gone. He was in Knoxville long enough. He probably still got lost driving places. Well, clearly he did, because he got pulled over for just that. But all those things, if he's turned it around and he was able to do that with Hugh Freeze and Jamie Chadwell, I think he's probably going to wind up at Auburn. It would be my guess, but
that's a possibility.
Or if I'm Hugh Freeze and I can't get the guy that I gave the second chance to back, I'd probably be kicking myself.
No, that would make a lot of sense, and I wasn't even thinking about Hugh Freeze, honestly. But yeah, I mean, you already pursued him once, recruited him, had him in the fold for a couple of seasons, and so you know him probably about as well as anybody now at this point, who's going to be out there scouring the transfer portal for a quarterback. And obviously Auburn with an okay year, I guess, this past season. Very forgettable in a lot of ways. If you're not an Auburn fan in particular, there wasn't a lot of reasons to pay attention to them, although you're paying close attention to that Iron Bowl there at the end, and they definitely left some more meat on the bone there. But yeah, that would seem to make a lot of sense just off the top of reuniting those two and having him back in the fold with Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, he's going to get a lot of looks. I like the idea. USC just signed a receiver from Tufts.
Yeah.
Tufts, which is famous for things like their dental school.
Yeah.
It's but he's 6'3", 200. He's dominated that league. And so, yeah, why not? Look, if you think you can give him a shot with what you've got at USC, I like that. I love those things. That's my favorite. The Cam Ward stories are my favorite part of the transfer portal. The Jared Versus and Cam Wards and guys who were under-recruited, or like in Jared Versus' case, went to Albany, discovered protein shakes, and then I guess we missed on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So
guys do fall through the cracks somehow still, and sometimes it could be a grades thing. It could be any number of things. But yeah, there are players who, are able to show that they are, or that they belong on a different level. And Cam Ward, I think, is the poster child for that. Or one of those poster boys for that. So, yeah, I love seeing that glow up, or whatever you want to refer to it, that come up as much as anybody. I do think that's a great part of the portal.
Yeah, and look, there are other things like,
but that's not Caden Salter, to be clear.
No.
He started off at Tennessee. So, him going to the SEC wasn't like Cam Ward jumping to the Power 5. But, yeah, I mean, he's somebody who's proven what he can do now. He's played a good bit these past couple of seasons, had a really good year this year. It's just the level of competition was not very good, but beyond that, he's a very talented player. So, yeah, I could definitely see Auburn and a number of others being interested, especially now that the quarterback pool sort of dried up a little bit, and he's just jumped into it. You got something, Garrett?
Does he keep the stupid helmet style at his next stop? That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I'm sorry. I just had to.
Can you refer to for people that don't know?
Okay, so this helmet looked like it sat about 4 inches off the top of his head. I've never seen anything like that.
So it was the opposite of Major Applewhite, whose helmet sat right here.
It was.
He always looked like he was.
It was brutal. I had to find a picture.
It's one of those like extra shells when they were first coming up with the concussion ideas. Remember when they had like the extra shell, like Don Beebe used to wear? Was it Don Beebe?
No, Steve Tasker.
Steve Tasker, yeah.
Steve Tasker, yeah.
When you had like the extra helmet on the helmet kind of thing, it was where your head looks massive, like you have the big brain or something. Yes. Yeah, that's what salt. Yeah, it looks funky for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Paxton asks KJ Jefferson or Will Howard.
I'd go
Will Howard.
Yeah, I'd go Will Howard there.
Although I do like KJ Jefferson's potential and Gus Malzahn's offense. I think Will Howard would be able to maybe be more of a, like, you could plug him in a lot more places than maybe KJ Jefferson.
Yeah, and I think, with KJ Jefferson, obviously losing Kendall Briles was a bad thing for him. They had a pretty good chemistry and thing going on there, and then Kendall leaves for TCU, and KJ Jefferson had a clear step back this past season for a number of reasons, but I think that's right there near the top of the list, and so that hurt him, losing Kendall Briles. To be with a guy like Gus Malzahn and company will, I think, definitely benefit KJ Jefferson. But I'd go Will Howard there. But I we're probably almost splitting hairs really when you get to a certain level of the quarterbacks. I think it becomes about fit, right, and the coaching and who you've got around you and those types of things. So I could see where Will Howard could be better, but it depends on the situation and all those types of things. But yeah, he's still out there, and I'm kind of surprised by that. But there's only so many life rafts still out there, at least for the moment.
I think the one that surprised me the most that hasn't got, because they've literally been in on seemingly everybody, and we know their NIL flows pretty regularly. And maybe it's just the desperation is a stinky cologne, is Miami. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm really surprised that they have not found one out yet. Like that to me, and I never, Cam Ward was taking so long to decide. I really did feel like, especially when it floated out, like the NFL is still on the table for him, that he was just waiting to get to hear from the NFL what he wanted to hear. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as he heard that he was like, well, okay, it was cool to go see these couple of places, but he only took 2 visits. So he either knew exactly where he wanted to go between 2 spots, or he was just doing it as the backup plan, which clearly that was, because he's now his way to the NFL. And Miami, I think, put a lot of eggs in that basket because you're kind of waiting and all that, is where, FSU had a different plan of like, okay, I think they were pretty much straight up with DJ, and we're like, hey, this is what we've got going on here. If you can wait. He's like, okay, good deal. I know I'll be in demand. Cam Ward declares to the NFL. Literally, I even text you guys, 20 minutes you'll hear about DJU, and it was maybe right on that. Like, DJU's going to come. That's going to just knock it down. And so now, you're Miami, you're kind of scrambling as to what's going on here.
Yeah, but Will Howard's still out there. Yeah. And now Malachi Nelson's out there, and there's still players available. So maybe, I guess in theory Cam Ward could change his mind too. Yeah. In the next few days, but he does have a clock that's now ticking out there. But yeah, it's not a barren wasteland now at this point, but the offerings are a little bit slimmer than they were just a couple of days ago or a few days ago. So yeah, they're a very intriguing team, considering that at one point they were mentioned with 3 of the top potential quarterback gets in this transfer portal, and they have yet to sign one. But again, they could turn around and sign Will Howard in 30 minutes from now. I will say on that front that Grayson Grundhafer over from Sikkim 365 did mention that I guess DeQuan Finn posted on Instagram that he has now arrived in Waco and is ready to go, I guess, to get the offseason and the spring semester started up. So DeQuan Finn, we knew he had committed before we left for Christmas break and all that jazz, but still you want to see it official and get boots on the ground. And so his shoes are now firmly here in Central Texas, and so that's good to see that. And that's a program that obviously was amongst those right out of the gates. We need a quarterback, and they got DeQuan Finn pretty quickly. But yeah, Miami's still out there, and a few others that we talked about at the beginning of the show that you're wondering about when it comes to the quarterback pursuit. But there's still quarterbacks entering, as we saw today. So it just kind of gives and takes, this whole transfer portal thing.
Baylor's got a couple of stud wide receivers coming onto campus, too. And Mikey Matthews from Utah, highly recruited player, and LeJante Wester from Florida Atlantic, who is just a receptions machine.
They need receivers in a major way. They tried the whole let's grow up the young guys, and that's just too slow of a process. And I don't really think you can afford to do that in the portal era. You can do that with a couple of your younger guys, but you better have some older guys or some younger proven guys that are playing right out of the gates and producing, because the whole nobody's producing, but hey, in 2 years, all of you sophomores are going to be great. It's just not a wise plan, or I think a very successful plan to have in this era. It's year to year now, and you try to keep your guys for as long as you can, but you cannot bank on, well, this class, if they just stick around you can't bank they're going to be here for more than another 12 months. So how are you going to plan for 2 years from now? You can do that, but that can't be plan A. It's got to be, all right, we got what we got this year. How do we best maximize that? And then hope with plan A.2 or whatever, and then in theory, everybody sticks around, and what does that look like heading into next year? But you got to worry about this year. So, go get LaJohntay Wester. Go get guys who can make plays, because you had very little of that last year. You've addressed quarterback. You've made a change at coach on offensive line and at OC. We'll see how sort of the recruiting along the O-line goes. They do have some young players there as well, but I think you've got to go get some proven guys. And wide receiver, you're good at running back. I think you're good at tight end. Jake Roberts entered the transfer portal yesterday. He was only here for a year, so he's headed to his third school. He was okay, but with Jeff Grimes leaving, I don't think that's a massive loss for you. So, the wide receiver position is right there at the top of the list of needs, and so that's good to see.
It has been for a while.
Another receiver that should be on campus, I believe it's the 6th, is Ashton Hawkins, coming up from Texas State, who torched Baylor in the past 2 years. I think he'd be a great fit in Waco.
He's a really good player, and I could definitely see him coming in and making an impact, and not surprised to see he's a guy who's one of those we talked about, not as drastic as a Cam Ward glow up, but certainly a guy who's proven that he can play on this level, being Power 5. I'm not a snob with all that, but just saying he's deserving of a step up from Texas State. So I think that would be a really good place for them to look. And Spavital obviously knows San Marcos and that whole program pretty well. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, let's take a break right here. When we come back, we'll talk more portal, more college football news. And at 5:30, John Kurtz, who covers Kansas State, will be with us talking about everything going on with the Wildcats, which have been a couple different things this week, and looking forward to their offseason. Now building a team around Avery Johnson. This is 365 Sports.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. But when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs. Knowing you, that's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB, your bank for life, is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
Cars priced right, day and night. At Richard Car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. At Richard Car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. At Richard Car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. At Richard Car in Waco, Texas.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. Garrett, do you have a picture of Caden Salter?
We do, thanks to Emery Winter.
Yes, Emery's clutch.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. Look at this head, man.
I mean, is that due to his hair?
It's like hair. It's one of those like.
Well, he's got the little,
and, Oh, it's bad, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta get a better fit than that. And it looks like the face mask is too close to his face. Although I feel that about Patrick Mahomes as well, that his face mask is too close to his face.
Yeah, there's so many different variations of the helmets now, like the different styles of helmets that I saw some the other day that like looked about as sleek as they've looked for concussion protection, because originally they had all the helmets looked like that.
Yeah.
And you had like the extra shell on it that just looked really funky and weird. But I think that's hair. That's, that combination of things right there. But it does look pretty large. That's for sure. They could probably get him a better fit at wherever he ends up. But maybe that's just his choice as well to keep his head right. But, yeah, great player and excited to see where he lands and what he can do at a bigger school. But that was not the way you obviously wanted it to end with Liberty. And I know nobody was crying tears for them, however. They are not very well liked, and I think that they know that. But that was about, if you were anti-Liberty rolling in, that's about what you wanted to see, and you got what you wanted with the way Oregon beat them down. I was hoping for more from Salter, just to be able to kind of show his skills against a really good team like that, but was just not in the cards for the Flames in that particular bowl game. So anyways, he'll be on to some interesting things. But, that's Ian McCall and the whole strategy of – I did wonder this about Liberty. Ian McCall, who was the AD at Baylor and then went over to Liberty, he had a strategy when he was trying to build up the program after decades of just basically bad to ugly and nothingness. And there are a few moments sprinkled in between of some good things there. But he's trying to get the program resurrected and to be one of the best. And part of his strategy was not just winning games and having a coach who's now, disgraced and out of there. But when they were starting off and they were rolling, RG3 winning the Heisman obviously helped things tremendously. But what did Ian McCall always say, like was part of their strategy, was
6 wins.
6 wins, man. Just get to a bowl game. And so schedule however you have to do that. When you couldn't guarantee really much in the way of Big 12 wins, schedule 3 give-me non-conference wins. And they were adamant about that. And then it got to the point where they were starting to win 10 games almost every year, it felt like, and you're going, well, you can schedule a little harder now, right?
Yeah.
And they were still sort of slow to do that and eventually started to. And they started to is when everything just completely crumbled. And now we're seeing those games that they scheduled that are starting to now come to fruition all of these years later. But that was the strategy. So that's very much the strategy there. He's not worried about the strength of schedule.
No.
He's just trying to get to the big bowl game and give them an opportunity. But I do wonder now, like, what did you lose out opportunity-wise? Because if there's a situation like that again, is the committee or are those involved going to be like, yeah, let's bring Liberty in because of what you saw in that game? You know, like how does that kind of tarnish their ability to have that spot again? And you know, in the future with an expanded playoff, it's all going to look different. But that was a big opportunity, and that was one that was certainly I don't know if squandered is the right word for it, because Oregon was just so much better than them. It was that clear. But yeah, that was one that came and went with a thud for sure.
And remember, they had the lead in the game for a little bit, and you thought like, oh man, like
hey,
they had their
hang
here we
around.
go. And I think that I bet Liberty was hoping, like, man, they're going to have some, like, there's no way Bo Nix is going to play in this game, or Troy Franklin or Bucky Irving or any of these guys. Brandon Dorless, like, oh, no. All these guys are going to opt out. They got one of the better centers in the country, and Jackson Powers Johnson. Oh, my gosh, there's no way. And then, like, all but one of them was there.
Yeah.
Like, all but one of them was there. Bo Nix was there. And you're like, oh, well, it was fun having that thought while it lasted.
Then the second quarter happened, and you're like, all right, well, so much for all of the thoughts about them hanging around and making it a game.
All right, so here is the anti-Caden Salter helmet right here. This is Major Applewhite when he was the quarterback at Texas. This always bothered me about watching him play is, like, it was over his eyes.
Yeah, and he's got a chin mask.
Yeah.
Instead of a face mask. Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, my granddad and he took me to a dinner at their church at Hyde Park Baptist in Austin when I would have been in college about the same time that Major was. And so I was visiting him for the summer. He goes, hey, Major Applewhite's going to come speak at the church. I said, okay, great. Let's go. I love football, even though, our family is maroon and white and not burnt orange. And I was at Florida State, so but I lean that way. But yeah, so went to see him, and there was a little kid that asked him at the thing, why does your helmet not fit? And he was like, it just fits me how it fits me. And then, like, I'm sitting there the rest of that time at the Q&A going, that's not an answer, Major.
Yeah. It's like, you can adjust that. You have a whole training staff just specifically knowledgeable in helmets and whatnot.
Like, Mac Brown's never come up to you and gone, hey, man, like, I've been doing this a long time. And
well, it kind of fit with the whole, like, Opie thing, though, like like the helmet that was too big and the jerseys hanging off, that I think it kind of fit that time and that era and that persona. So, but yeah, that's definitely the anti-Caden Salter type of a helmet.
Yeah, his is up too high. Major's was too low. But yeah, I remember, like, sitting there, in the like church and, like, being, or I guess it was in the banquet hall, whatever, but just sitting there, like, the rest, I don't know what he said after that point, because it was all I could think about was like, well, I mean, there's, and then I had a friend at FSU who was like on the equipment staff, like he was a student on that staff, and I called him after the thing and said, hey, if somebody's helmet was like, nobody's helmet doesn't fit. Like, we go through a whole process of where even in the 90s, they would, measure your head and then order you one, and this is how it's supposed to. It's not like high school where they have 10 larges and then like 10 mediums and 10 smalls, and then they just go through, and then there's a kid who's got a gigantic melon. They have to call up the sports thing and be like, hey, we got a kid who's, toting around a Casaba here. Let's get him the double XL. So
yeah, no, it's not like that at all. Yeah, the helmet technology's come a long way, that's for sure. And now, yeah, Caden Salter's got the bigger one that I'm sure is concussion protection and those types of things, and part of his hairstyle and all that as well. But yeah, Major had a totally different look. It's part of the changing fashion of college football and the changing technology. Now I got the helmets commercials with what is that deaf players?
Kid,
yeah, that's pretty
awesome.
cool little commercial that I saw a couple times during the holidays. So I'm interested to see what that looks like when it gets rolled out for whoever that fits, and good for the technology out there to kind of make strides like that. It looks like a pretty cool futuristic sort of deal. I'd be interested in checking that out in person.
I wonder if they do, if they can do that for the snap count.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because how they do it, I know at least here, Austin has their Texas School for the Deaf, or is it Austin School for the Deaf?
I think it's the Austin or Texas School. It's Texas School for Deaf.
Texas School for the Deaf in Austin, and I've seen them play once before they played Riker, and they have this big drum that they hit on the sidelines, and the guys can feel the vibrations in the ground.
Makes sense.
So if they have a helmet where like it just the
like
thing
your
just
cell
says
phone
go,
buzzes, maybe something like that. That
yeah,
makes sense.
so like it vibrates or something like that. Like, okay, second vibration go. I don't know, but they've obviously figured out beyond the technology. So maybe not add technology where you don't need it, but it would be pretty interesting. I saw a story here. I needed your comment on, Craig, and I've now lost it. JJ McCarthy said today in the conference call that he guessed 80% of college football teams steal signs, including Ohio State, and that he feels Michigan did what they did because they thought that a few years ago that Ohio State had their signs.
Oh, so it's not their fault. It's their rival's fault.
So this is where it starts to trickle down. And look, it's not on none of this Connor Stallion stuff is on the players.
Dude, he was at the game. Did you see
he
that?
was at the game. Yeah. He was look, if you're going to be a stalker that reached the pinnacle, so he's either a stalker that reached the pinnacle or he's like Mark Wahlberg in that movie Rockstar.
Haven't seen that.
You haven't seen that one?
No.
Yeah. It's not the best, but basically it's the Judas Priest story kind of repurposed where Mark Wahlberg is at the front row at his favorite rock band show and he's singing along, and then the lead singer quits and they find a tape of him and they make him the lead singer of his rock band because he sounds just like the other guy.
Okay.
Which is what happened with Judas Priest. But they for a different reason. But they
JJ
McCarthy and Connor Stallion is either stalker or he's Mark Wahlberg from that movie that was there, and they brought him along. But yeah, look, if you're going to be a stalker and write a manifesto, you can't just leave it off when you resign in disgrace. You got to keep going.
Yeah, I mean he's dedicated to the Wolverines, that's for sure. I don't know what to make of all that that stuff. At this point, there's a lot of he said. I guess the proof will come out in the pudding, one way or the other. I'm sure there's some proof out there for them to be able to show, to establish that it was all Ohio State's fault. Imagine that. But, there's just a lot of weird things going on. I don't think by any means that Michigan was the only team doing that. I don't really care to revisit it all that much, but I do think it's something you have to bring up when it was such a big story at the beginning, and now here they are and they're playing for the national championship. Now, granted, during that time, their head coach was suspended twice, missed some games. They kept rolling on and kept winning despite all of that. I understand J.J. McCarthy's got to stick up for his guys. What else are you going to expect him to say? And so it's not a surprise that he's going to say, well, we're not the only ones, or this or that, or it's Ohio State or whatever. But, there's more in the dark there that we still don't know about. And there's too much just Michigan message boarding and Ohio State message boarding and college football message boarding and pointing fingers and you clearly haven't seen the tweet that said that this happened, and it's just confusing to keep up with and sort through all of the noise. So I hope at some point this offseason, that'd be something you'd probably want to clear up and get to the bottom of. But right now is probably not the best time as Michigan's preparing for a national championship in just a few days. But that is some unfinished business out there. Although, from a Michigan standpoint, you've served your suspension. Jim Harbaugh served his suspension or whatever. But a lot of still finger pointing and, you were doing that we never really got to the end of.
So here's his quote. And it leaves out what is at the center of this, which I think that people are missing, or especially people who are pro-Michigan are missing. It is not the stealing of signs that's in question here. It's the method that is at question, that was against the rules. And you can argue with the validity of that and the reasons that the rule exists, but the rule does exist. So we actually had to adapt in 2020 or 2019 when Ohio State was stealing our signs, which is legal. And they were doing it. We had to get up to the level they were at. We had to make it an even playing field. You could say it's all sign stealing, but there's a lot more that goes into a play and a lot of stuff that gets masked, a lot of work that gets masked just because the outside perception of what sign stealing is all about. Okay. Nothing he said there to me, other than, throwing a dart at Ohio State and saying they were doing it. That's not the thing. If you have a guy who is sneaking onto Central Michigan's sideline, for God's sakes, with sunglasses with a camera in it, you have maybe stepped over the line of what other guys are doing.
Yeah, it's a kind of complex story. In the end, he's just saying they were doing it, so we did it. At the same time, we're all acknowledging that sign stealing is not legal. So is he referring to that simply, or is he referring to any other parts of it that maybe went a little bit too far? It's hard to say. It's hard to know unless you were in those walls. The Connor Stallions thing stinks to high heaven, and how he was ending up at all these games and all of that. But I can kind of see both sides of that. I can see where you could read that J.J. McCarthy quote or hear it and go, he just admitted to sign stealing and they were cheating and doing all that. And then I think you can also look at it and say, well, yeah, everybody's doing it. It's not technically illegal, and he's not saying that this or that. He's just acknowledging that it took place. But I think when you include Ohio State and it's like, well, they were doing it, so we had to, that's where it becomes a controversial thing to say, because that's not really justifying why. I mean, it is and it isn't, So they were doing this thing, so we had to do it to make it even playing field. I think that's the part of the quote that really is going to cause people to go, wait, what did he say? And then have their various interpretations of it.
And it falls back into the narrative of that was the early defense. Is the only reason you know about this is that a private eye that Ryan Day's younger brother knows is the one who released all this information. And, we have information that says Ohio State and Rutgers and somebody else had conspired against us. And then it gets to look, man, you guys got caught doing something. And instead of trying to justify why you did it, just be like, all right, look, we'll stop doing that. You got us, yes, we took it a little bit too far. We got a little too Houston Astros on this deal. We've learned our lesson. We'll take it back. But when it comes out of but everybody's doing okay, the Astros never really took that tact when it came to it. It was brought up, but
no, they were defiant.
They were defiant. They were basically who, why are you?
Go screw yourselves.
Yeah.
Do something about it. Basically, it's kind of how it came across to me, at least.
But they never did say, well, the Rangers have done it.
Right? No, I mean, and I'm a Rangers fan, so I took whatever they said, with very little credibility. I was like, yeah, no, they were absolutely cheating, because that just fits my narrative. So imagine that. That Ohio State fans will view it to fit their narrative, or Michigan fans and vice versa. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's copying to anything there that wasn't already known, or admitting some, salacious thing. It's just saying that they were trying to even the playing field. And again, that's something that I think depends on your vantage point. You're going to view a certain type of way, whether it's just establishing that they did it for not nefarious reasons, and that really the nefarious ones were Ohio State, I guess, or that it's all doesn't matter because it's not illegal, or however you want to take it, you're going to take it. But they, if anything, did have their coach miss some games and did have that whole saga hanging over them. And kind of like the Astros, they went and found themselves in a position at least to win the whole dadgum thing. And the Astros obviously won it, pretty closely. Was it right after the scandal, or was it a couple years later? I can't even remember at this point. But it was pretty closely after the Astros went and won it again. It's all right, now what? Yeah. And that's basically what Michigan can do. It's all right, so you claim this and you discuss that and you accuse this and you accuse that.
They won, then they lost to the Nats, and then they won. So, yeah.
Right. So, they went pretty quickly after that. So, yeah, that's what Michigan can go and do. And I know it's going to leave a bitter taste in some people's mouths of well, they're cheaters and all that. But it's not a black and white story. It's not. There's a lot of gray in that story, and a lot of, I think, shades of gray that we're not even still really all that clear on. So, it is what it is. Ohio State had a chance to beat him and not even allow J.J. McCarthy to have this press time, and they weren't able to do that. So here are the Wolverines, and whether you like it or not, whether you love it or hate it, they're one game away from the national championship trophy. So, they still were able to get it done despite all of that. But, yeah, that's definitely something. I'm sure there will be some fans that if they win it, they'll put their own personal little asterisk on it, or have a tainted view of it, and then I think most people will just sort of move on from it, honestly, because the story itself sort of died down, and I think the ones that are most ravenous about it still are Ohio State fans, and primarily them. Elsewhere, I see a little snide comment here and there, but that's basically every topic known to man on Twitter.
Yeah.
So that's not any different than any other story. But that's why I asked the question yesterday of not trying to label it as anything, but I just wonder from y'all's perspective of, did it feel weird to see Michigan win? Does it make you not want to watch the national championship game as much? Does it make you say well, if they win it, they're cheat? I don't think any of us really had that vibe at this point, because they just kept going about their business. So, whatever it is there is to uncover, maybe that's what the offseason brings. But, I mean, Michigan served its penalty up to this point and just kept on winning, and here they are. But I can understand why that gets a lot of attention suddenly, especially from Ohio State fans, that quote. But I think it's all in the eye of the beholder there.
It is. He probably could have done himself better by being look, yeah, I mean, we knew that, as a player, I know that we had the signs. He's but
he apparently got contacted this afternoon to clarify. Yeah. No, I want to follow up on that because I don't know who this dude is, and you never know. Okay, he's an AP sports writer. Shout out to Eric Olson out there. McCarthy, when reached by AP this afternoon, when I said we need to level the playing field, I meant in terms of how we change our own signs, how we develop our signs, and how and when we distribute those changes when we know signs are likely to have been stolen. So there's his clarification on it. He clearly had to clean up on aisle 4 after JJ's press conference. They needed to clarify that a little bit. So there's this clarification, and you can, again, that's something else. You can take that how you want to. There's absolutely somebody who's read that is like, BS, he's lying. He's covering up for what he said earlier, and that was a smoking gun, and like that's how it goes. But
well, no, look, here's the thing. It's not dumb for him to say, like, everybody knew that they had the signs. Like, JJ McCarthy doesn't have, like, if you told me, is JJ McCarthy part of Connor Stallion's thing? No, like,
right.
JJ McCarthy probably couldn't pick him out of a lineup half the time. You know, or maybe he does. I don't know. But there's so many guys in that staff, but he doesn't know what's the deal is really and what the method is. All he knows is that Connor Stallion's is there, right?
Yeah, and he also said and went on to say that he thinks a lot of that just really kind of, I don't know if marred would be the right way to describe it, but I forget what word he used, but he said that it overshadowed a lot of like the actual like really good work that they were all doing and all the work that was put into this whole run and getting to this point. It is whether you want to put an asterisk on it or not, there's going to be some part of the public that's going to have this, you know, this feeling about 2023 Michigan if they go on to win the national title. There will forever be Ohio State fans, obviously, and then the sprinkling of others that do wonder if, well, is that tainted in some way? And again, that's why I asked the question yesterday. I don't think for us it will be, but that is certainly something that, you know, he brings up there is for those who did do it the right way, which was most of Michigan football, this bastard Connor Stallions and this whole like to do, whether it involved Harbaugh or not or whatever, it has put a little bit of a cloud over what should otherwise be like this grand journey. And it's not going to ruin it for Wolverines fans because you're still getting to take part in it and you're still going to maybe go win a natty next Monday. But there is that underlying subplot that is going to, you know, always sort of be there for some people. And that does overshadow some of this, the pure actual work that went into their pursuit.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, John Kurtz joins us. We'll talk about all the goings-on with K-State, what their offseason looks like as they build around Avery Johnson. This is 365 Sports.
Drive into the new year with confidence and excitement during the Start Something New sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get incredible deals on our entire selection of new Ram trucks, Jeeps, SUVs, Chrysler sedans, or a sporty Dodge. Get more for less guaranteed. More value, more selection, more service, more trade-in allowance, and even more competitive financing. Hurry in and start 2024 with a bang. Shop the greatest selection of inventory in Central Texas at Allen Samuels in Waco. In-store or online at allensamuelsdcj.com and make it unforgettable.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Aaron Duvall, owner, Texas Beef House. Aaron, it's premium grade East Texas beef, and you're located just outside of Tyler. No hormones, no antibiotics, no steroids, the kind of beef that people want. And then also your label is what catches people's attention as well.
Yes, we have a all-natural, pasture-raised Wagyu beef. It's a USDA label. That means our cattle never spend any time in the feed yard. They go straight from the pasture to the day of harvest, and we oversee the whole process from the beginning of the genetic choices when we make these matings to the time the calves are born to the feed choices all the way through when the animals are harvested. So we oversee the whole thing as a family, and we just believe, life's too short to eat average beef, so we offer people a chance to step up their game and try Wagyu beef at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
Welcome back. 365 Sports. John Kurtz. I'm sorry. My gosh. So look, we're off for almost 2 weeks. Sometimes you forget how to talk. But John Kurtz, one of our good friends, look him up on YouTube. He's got a great content on his YouTube channel. K-State. John, it's been an interesting last couple of weeks. Look, Will Howard in the transfer portal. The Avery Johnson era officially begins. It begins with a bang at the most interesting bowl game that there was in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And then now a new offensive coordinator. Your head must be kind of spinning. Just football-wise when it comes to Kansas State right now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on, although I would say at least lately things have been trending in the right direction. They're around the time that Colin Klein left for Texas A&M. It was feeling like the bottom may be coming out, and you worried about where everything was going. I think this program's done a really nice job of stopping the bleeding, and that's really a testament to kind of the culture that Chris Kleiman has built. He's just such a rock steady individual that I think that's been reflected here. So, yeah, I feel like after the bowl game, Avery Johnson, you made it through this transfer portal window. Avery Johnson's still there. He's going to be there. He's going to be the quarterback next year. They are hot to trot after some wide receiver targets in the transfer portal. They seem to be stepping up their NIL game. They seem to now have a plan at offensive coordinator, which I think will be a co-coordinator situation. And they're bringing in a former Big 12 head coach in order to do that and be the quarterback coach of Avery Johnson. So I feel much better about things than I did a couple of weeks ago for sure.
All right, John, let's unpack it a little bit. I guess it'd be best to start with the bowl game because that's kind of the older news now at this point. But the Pop-Tarts Bowl, obviously a very festive game and a lot of attention being paid to that because of just the host and how they handled the Pop-Tarts Bowl itself. But getting a win over a top 25 team, getting Avery Johnson out there in front of America. Just what were your feelings about the Pop-Tarts Bowl as a whole and I guess what it does or what it showed for Kansas State football?
Yeah, I feel really good about that performance, honestly. I think it's aged well to me, too, as I think about it in retrospect, because look, going into the game, I kind of felt like there was a good chance that they would lose. I know that NC State was playing without its best defensive player in Peyton Wilson, who was the Bednarik Award winner, but that was still a really good defense that had basically everybody else there. It was a top 20 defense in the country this season, and you were going at it with a quarterback making his first career start at QB and then a first-time play caller and offensive coordinator and Connor Riley, who had the reins for the bowl game. You were without Ben Sinnott, who was the best target that K-State's had basically the last 2 years on offense. And it's going to be an NFL tight end. And then they were without Phillip Brooks, who was the most consistent and reliable wide receiver that they had last year, too. So minus all of that, the offense really did a pretty nice job putting up 28 points. And you had some drops from receivers, quite frankly, that didn't help Avery Johnson out very much. That killed a couple of other drives, or else they could have put 30-plus points on the board there. But led it wire to wire. They were in control wire to wire of that game. I mean, I come away feeling really good about it. I thought Avery Johnson acquitted himself very well. Obviously, he's the bowl game MVP. He had over 250 total yards, 3 touchdowns. We know he can run. Texas Tech certainly knows that. You saw the 5 rushing TDs he had in that game. He had another spectacular rushing TD on a scramble, but that kind of slot fade that he threw to Jace Brown at the end of the game to put it away in the end zone was a beautiful ball. You got to see Jace Brown make a play, and he had over 400 yards receiving in the back half of the season. Looks like K-State's most promising young wideout in a very long time, and I think those two are going to have a really good connection. Love that. They use Garrett Oakley, who's a guy that they feel like has Ben Sinnott-type upside at the tight end position. He had a nice game, although one of his huge plays got called back on a penalty, but I digress. He had a really nice game for K-State, too. So there was a lot to like. Defense was rock solid. I come away feeling really good, and especially to accentuate the Avery Johnson point. There's been so much hype about him, and I saw some who are kind of like, okay, looked pretty good, but there's been so much hype. Like, why didn't I see like some 5 touchdown performance from him or something? I mean, go look at other true freshman quarterbacks across the country that have played. Like Jackson Arnold, I think he just threw another interception, just had another turnover as we speak right now. Another heralded freshman who struggled in the bowl game with turnovers. Arch Manning, I was reading this long piece on The Athletic the other day about Arch Manning when he was getting interviewed at Media Day before the Sugar Bowl. I mean, he didn't even get on the field ahead of Malik Murphy, who I think we all saw has a bunch of flaws. You just look at it. Dante Moore really struggled at times this year as a freshman. The fact that he didn't turn it over against NC State, who was second in the country at turnovers forced per game, or interceptions per game it was, to me was incredibly impressive. I think the poise with the skill set that you see is enough to have you really salivating about the possibilities for next year.
Yeah, I don't think that you can just look at a box score and be able to have a great indication of Avery Johnson's talent level, because as soon as you turn the TV on and watch him, it's pretty clear. The box score is not going to show you the athletic ability necessarily, but yeah, it's pretty clear when you watch. It doesn't take long to figure it out either. The kid's got some tools, so yeah, absolutely. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, and you can see that. You can see that from the word go this year. The second he got on the field, I remember the first non-con game that they played this year. One of the first carries he had. I mean, he was just making people look foolish running out in the open field. So, there's a reason. I felt like this was probably a little harsh from Andre Ware, who was doing color in the game. But he, as Avery Johnson rolled out on that scramble touchdown he had, he said, "Well, yeah, that'll make you hit the transfer portal." Kind of in reference to Will Howard there. And look, I think Will's great, and he's probably going to wind up being a quarterback of Ohio State next year. But at the same time, yes, you can understand why that talent would drive somebody away.
All right, let's talk about that real quick. Will Howard and Ohio State, I guess potentially USC or Miami as well, but he's going to go visit Ohio State, and this might be the first transfer portal visit quarterback they've had. I mean, sometimes these things are not as public, but he seems to be, because they weren't in on the Cam Ward, and it didn't appear that they were in on any of these other guys like Gabriel or Dante Moore or whoever. Do you think he's a fit for that system, or is he maybe the most reliable guy that's left in the portal?
I think it's probably some of both. And look, I am rooting like hell for Will Howard. I mean, I love the guy. He was great for K-State, won a Big 12 championship, something only 2 other quarterbacks have ever done in school history. He's a stand-up guy. He went through a lot of crap throughout his career and didn't transfer early on when I think a lot of people really would have. So I utmost respect for him, and I want nothing but his success next year. I think at Ohio State, he probably is about the most reliable guy that you could go out and get at this point. The Cam Ward sweepstakes was certainly something that a lot of people had as a very coveted item, and him going to the NFL was a big blow, I think, for a lot of people really interested there. And so it makes sense to me from that aspect. Like Ohio State, I mean, we all watched the bowl game, right? I mean, the Cotton Bowl, they were just dreadful at quarterback, and it seems clear that they're going to need some help there. So I see why they would be going to pursue him right now. As far as his fit, I just think the fit is Ohio State figures to have a lot of weapons around him. And I say this without in-depth, intimate knowledge of what exactly they have coming back, but they churn out NFL wide receivers. They've always had a stable of really talented running backs. And the thing with Will Howard is he was at his most effective in 2022 when his numbers as a starter that year were elite, top 10 in the country in terms of points per drive when he was leading the K-State offense in 2022. And that was when he had the most around him. He had Deuce Vaughn, he had Malik Knowles, he had Cade Warner to go along with Ben Sinnott. And I'm not sure that K-State had anybody else outside of Ben Sinnott this year who could touch either of those three in terms of their actual talent in the passing game in particular. TJ Giddens is pretty good, so maybe I shouldn't put that on him, but you get the point. Like when K-State had a lot around him, he was really good. And when there was less around him and things got a little less reliable and a little more shaky, he was a little more shaky. So I don't know that he's the kind of guy that's going to elevate an entire roster or an entire offense to an elite level. But if you put elite pieces around him, he's certainly a guy that can deliver the football and get the ball out to those playmakers. And that was clearly what was just sorely missing from Ohio State's performance when they're having to rely on, again, a true freshman quarterback to slam home the point on Avery Johnson. You see how that looked at Ohio State, and you see how that looked for K-State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. It was quite different. So that, to me, is where I think he can be pretty good for Ohio State. Is that going to be like national championship good for them? I don't know. And again, some of that would come down to some Ohio State analysis that I just don't have, not being close to that program. But yeah, I think there's every reason to believe that they could put an offense around him that would allow him to be pretty successful.
So, John, offensively for Kansas State next year, Avery Johnson's the man. We know that now. He's got some good tools around him. But now the offensive coordinator question with the departure of Colin Klein seems to be getting answered here pretty soon. Officially, Matt Wells, I guess it's unofficial right now, but should be official here, you would think soon. Matt Wells to become the new offensive coordinator. I think most people's brains go to his time at Texas Tech. That's not really indicative of the entire picture, though, with Matt Wells. I understand he's pretty close with Kleiman. So your reaction to Matt Wells, he's actually been rumored for quite a few jobs, it feels like, this offseason. I remember his name getting brought up for the Baylor OC job at one point. But why does this make sense, or why does it not? Just sort of your feelings on Matt Wells as the new OC in Manhattan.
Yeah, I mean, it's not shocking to me at all because I can remember hearing Chris Kleiman say at 2021 Big 12 Media Days that Matt Wells was one of his best friends in the coaching industry. So it's kind of been on everybody's radar for a little while, at least in K-State circles now. Like when Colin Klein got the job, I think at that point we were wondering, like, hey, is that something that, could Matt Wells be the guy then? I think what will actually happen, and we'll see how this plays out. You never actually know. But what it was sounding like to me early, and by early, I mean, like, it was like, I would say early in the day yesterday when really we started to get word, it kind of started to get out there that this was going to happen. It sounded like he would be the co-offensive coordinator with Connor Riley and then be the quarterback's coach. Who would be calling plays in that scenario? I don't know. Okay. But my expectation is that this would be a co-offensive coordinator situation. Now, look, to be fair, I work a day job. I haven't been totally in the loop on everything the last, maybe like 6, 7, 8 hours. So maybe something has changed. But that was what I was hearing as of yesterday. Now, as far as like my immediate reaction, I won't lie. I was a little bit like, I mean, I think it's solid. It's not, to me, it wasn't a home run, but it felt solid. And I was kind of like, maybe that's kind of a single. I think I'd probably upgrade it more to like a double after diving into some of the numbers there because, it was going around the offensive numbers of all of his teams at Utah State and then Texas Tech. And really there was one terrific year with Jordan Love. The rest was, kind of iffy. But if you break that down, and I have to give a lot of credit to my guy Cole Manbeck, who's a podcast co-host of mine on the Fremont podcast on KC Sports Network, he's great with this, and he really dove into it. I mean, yes, there was one tremendous year with Jordan Love, and then Jordan Love fell off the next year where his touchdown to interception ratio went from like 5 or 6 to 1 to about 1 to 1 when Matt Wells left. I mean, his production really changed that last year after Wells was gone. And then before that, early on in his time at Utah State, he turned Chucky Keaton into a star, and they had a really good offense with him one year. But then back-to-back years after that, they had a great start the next year, and he blows out his knee. And then the next year he tries to come back, and he gets hurt again. So quarterback injuries really thwarted things at Utah State after he had already turned Chucky Keaton into a star. So I would argue that he produced 2 real star quarterbacks at Utah State. And then, I don't know. I'm sure I'll have Texas Tech fans coming at me for this because I've seen their reaction to it. And look, I get it. They didn't like him as a head coach, and it sounds like cultural fit, CEO stuff as a head coach. He was not very good. Game management, not very good. I mean, he's not going to have to do any of that as a quarterback coach and a co-offensive coordinator. And at Texas Tech in 2021, he had a top 30 offense when he left. If you're just looking at the numbers at that point in the year. So that was another thing Cole pointed out to me. Like, the offense wasn't that bad, and they were 5-3, and it was actually a game-changing play by Felix Anudike-Uzama in the final game before he got fired. playing against K-State that kept them from being 6-2. And then I don't know if they even could have fired him. So I think Tech fans are probably a little too harsh on him, just in my humble opinion. Not that he was necessarily the right guy there, but you're talking about him being a position coach and co-offensive coordinator to work with Avery Johnson when he turned out Jordan Love and Chucky Keaton at Utah State, and now has worked under Oklahoma and at Oklahoma and Brent Venables and I mean, more importantly, Jeff Lebby, and hope he picked up some new ideas there with some time off. Like, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of reason to believe that this could work. I think one of my concerns would be like recruiting wise, what kind of recruiting chops does he have, especially compared to Colin Klein, who I think was a pretty good recruiter. But look, the things I was hearing today is that I will just say I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing so far on that front. So I am coming around to this actually being I think a pretty stealthy, solid hire for K-State.
Well, John, I do think you're right there. Like, part of it was just the personality wasn't a mesh in Lubbock. It just wasn't, and it wasn't going to be. And they went the other direction. They went with a guy who has got tons of it. So yeah, I don't think it was maybe a fair thing. And again, you're not talking about this guy taking over for Chris Klieman. You're talking about him working for him.
Yeah, exactly. And I also just think like the injuries were such a huge part of context matters, such a huge part of his career. That last year at Texas Tech, too, I believe there were quarterback injuries then. I mean, which Tech fans, I feel for you. I think that's been the story basically every year of Texas Tech football since Mike Leach left. I don't know that's that much of an exaggeration. Sans, I guess, the Patrick Mahomes era. But, so that has stunted a lot of what the final numbers would be with those offenses. I think you think of him, I thought of him as kind of like a bland personality, but if you go look at what his offenses actually are, they're not really bland offenses. And, that I think is kind of the problem. Like K-State fans, I think have bad flashbacks to Courtney Messingham, who was the offensive coordinator under Kleiman before Colin Klein, who was a pretty bland, dull, like that was not a real fun, sexy offense, really hard to recruit receivers to play in it. And so when and he had kind of a dull personality. And so when you see this guy like, we think he's kind of a dull personality, got fired from it. I think a lot of people fell back into that, but that's not really what Matt Wells' offenses actually are. So I think if you actually start to do some digging, I'll be honest, it was kind of a lazy take from me on it at first. And if you start to do some digging, I think it sounds a lot better than it actually might have on the surface.
So, John, I guess just we'll probably, I'm sure, check in back with you at some point during basketball season and whatnot, and then as we get closer to spring ball. But what's kind of on the to-do list now at this point in your eyes with it looks like OC settling in, obviously Avery Johnson at quarterback moving forward. That was kind of a no-brainer. But what's on the to-do list, so to speak?
Transfer portal wide receivers, I think, is number one. Now, I feel pretty good about what they have. Like I said, I think Jace Brown is an emerging potential number one. For them at receiver. They've got Keegan Johnson, who last year at this time everybody was stoked. They got him away from Texas A&M and Notre Dame. He was a huge coup to get out of the transfer portal. He just had a rough year. I mean, he battled some injuries, but never seemed to be able to really turn it on. He was like 3 for 30 in the bowl game after having some time to heal. So I guess there is some cautious optimism for him too, but I know they felt like he had the skill set to be a number one. He'll be around. Jaden Jackson's coming back, who's okay, solid, at least gives you a veteran presence there. And they've got a couple of young guys, like Trey Spivey, for instance, who they're really excited about, but I think he will just have to really dedicate himself in the offseason, but he's got a ton of talent, a ton of size. But it would make you feel a lot better if they get one or two guys that I would want, like a high upside guy and then maybe more like a proven production sort of guy. One name I would say, I have no idea how realistic it is this time around, but they were in on Malik Benson, who's originally from Lansing, Kansas, went to one of the Kansas JUCOs, I think it was Hutch, and then went to Alabama, and he just hit the portal. He was one of the 9 players from Bama that hit the portal today. So that is one to watch out for. He's obviously got a ton of talent. If Nick Saban had him on scholarship, he had like 168 yards receiving this year. It was not a crazy productive year at Bama. But they've got like 3 or 4 names that they're pretty hot on the pursuit of right now in the transfer portal at wide receiver. Would be nice if they could get a nose guard. It sounds like they may have a linebacker coming in to visit, potentially another offensive lineman too. They've got some needs there, but really for me, it's like, hey, go get another playmaker or two for Avery Johnson to throw the ball to a wide receiver, and I will feel a lot better. I'll also keep an eye too on what's going to happen with the coaching staff. I mean, there have been some whispers about maybe there was going to be more change than what we had already seen on the coaching staff. Not 100% sure if that's going to happen, but definitely something to keep an eye on if you are K-State right now. But I think at this point they've taken care of a lot of the real major things, and now it's just more of the icing on the cake sort of stuff that they'll be looking at.
John Kurtz, KC Sports Network, with us here on 365 Sports. And John, thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, anytime, guys. Take care.
All right. Thanks to John Kurtz for hopping on with us today. And, Kansas State, I'm always going to be interested. I'm a big Chris Kleiman fan. I really like personality and locale. Like, he fits Manhattan so well. And I know that, they weren't thrilled about Oklahoma State and Texas games and some decisions in particular, but I just think that, for what they need, I think he's just the perfect fit. So I think that, trust in the decisions he makes, I think it's going to work out for Kansas State.
Yeah, I'll take his opinions over that of any K-State message boarder. All due respect, just like I would expect the same with anybody, looking at Baylor or the Big 12 versus, in my opinion, you're going to probably trust the coaches. Now, that's not as we see with certain coach firings, and sometimes maybe the message boards or the fans do know more. But I think when it comes to Chris Kleiman, you've been pretty spoiled pretty quick, and you've got a very bright future. So yeah, I think any complaints or any misgivings are pretty quickly answered or are going to be okay in the long run. He's a really great coach, and he is a great fit, as you pointed out. And they've got a really fun young quarterback to get excited about and to build around. So K-State's going to be just fine, even though there's been a little bit of craziness, I guess, these last few weeks. That was as much basketball as anything, but that was a nice win for them and a good way to end the otherwise kind of up and down year. When you can win close to 10 games and have complaints, that's a pretty good place to be in versus where you maybe were a few years ago. So they're living good, and there are questions, no doubt about it, but they're going to be right there at the top of the odds list when it comes to the Big 12 and the preseason rankings. I would think Utah, K-State will probably be right there at the very top, and maybe Tech or somebody like that gets some love. But yeah, a lot to still learn. I mean, we saw some big transfer portal decisions today. We kind of touched nationally on the quarterback side of things, but you did have Houston added a quarterback and Zion Chris from Louisiana, guy who played pretty well after coming in for an injured player and then getting injured himself there at the end of the year, but give Donovan Smith some competition and somebody else in that room as Willie Taggart now takes over, and obviously he knows Louisiana and Zion Chris pretty well, so that was an interesting get by the Cougars as that new staff starts to build things up there down in H-Town. And then had Colin Oliver from Oklahoma State, linebacker, very good linebacker. Had the position change this past year, but coming back, he announced. So that's a huge bring back for Mike Gundy and that Cowboys defense that, they were sitting there in the Big 12 championship game. And the team they lost to there at the end is sitting there playing for a spot in the national title just the other night. I know that wasn't the showing that they wanted, but getting Colin Oliver back is a nice step forward to getting back into the same spot there in Arlington. And then how about UCF just kind of raiding Cincinnati here over the last few hours, but Deshaun Pace leading the pack there, getting the linebacker from the Bearcats. And so kind of weird to see that close to proximity type of move. We do see that on occasion, a guy going from Baylor to Tech or from Tech to Houston or whatever. But, a little Cincinnati to UCF action that's happened more than once, but Deshaun Pace earlier today.
Well, and UCF if you ask UCF people what the issue was, it wasn't their defensive line, it was the second level when it came to the run defense. So that's a really nice pickup for them.
Yep, so that's just some of the activity that's been going on, and there's a lot of focus on, the big stars, the big schools, or the big quarterbacks. But those are some interesting moves that have been made here over the last few hours, last 24 hours or so in the Big 12. So as we wrap up there with John, wanted to point that out as well. So yeah, lot to still be figured out, but the offseason is off and running, that's for sure. And we still got one more game to go, which should be pretty good next Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, it's now time for the top 5.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 intriguing new portal entries on offense. I'll do some defensive ones tomorrow, but Emery Winter puts this together for me every day and does a fantastic job. Number 5, and they're intriguing in different ways. Number 5, Jaquindon Jackson from Utah. Now, this was a guy when he came out of high school in was he at Duncanville, right, Craig?
Yeah,
at Duncanville. At Duncanville as a quarterback, won a state title, like all these things. And was going to Texas to be a quarterback. Then he transferred to Utah to be a quarterback at that time. He moved to running back. He's been very effective there. A little banged up this year. We saw him against Baylor. He didn't have some of that breakaway speed he had a year ago because he fought through some injuries. But he's in the portal, and he's a guy who's got some ability. I'm surprised to see him in the portal. Utah's had several guys hop in, which again. It's surprising, not surprising, but Jaquindon Jackson in the portal, this is a guy who can help somebody maybe get some yards on the ground, although he has not hit the potential. He's shown flashes that he was expected to when he came out. Of course, he did change positions as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what his desires are or what he's seeking there. I don't know if he's wanting to change positions again or what, just feels like there's better opportunities out there, but he was a nice, solid player for the Utes and had some moments bigger than others, but I thought he was always a very hard runner, very physical guy, big dude, and very talented athlete. So I'm sure he'll be intriguing for somebody out there, not as a featured piece, I wouldn't imagine, but as a nice complementary piece to whatever puzzle you're trying to put together there in the running back room, or I guess otherwise potentially. But I thought he transitioned to the running back spot pretty effectively for them, and as you mentioned, did deal with some injuries this past season, but I'm sure he'll be healthy and ready to go for his next stop. But, definitely a legendary type high school player down in these parts and somebody who I was a little bit surprised to see hit the portal. But, again, I don't know his situation exactly or, like, what Utah's idea of what they want next year to look like is. You know what I mean? Because the teams do have a say, too. Imagine that. The teams do have a say. But, no, he was a very good player for them, and I could see his role expanding somewhere else.
Yeah. Penny Boone, running back from Toledo. This is a guy who started at Maryland, and then he's dominated in the MAC. He's a bruiser, a big bruising running back. Louisville, Florida State, and Kentucky are his top 3 right now. He's taking a visit to Louisville this week. But if you are looking to move the chains and pick up first downs and score when you're in the red zone, this is a very interesting guy. And look, Louisville, like any one of those 3, he's going to have pretty good years. I mean, Louisville just can't, or Kentucky, if he goes there, just had a great transfer season out of Ray Davis, who was super fun to watch when you watch Kentucky. That would be a good fit. Of course, I can be very biased and tell you that you should make the best decision of your life and move to Tallahassee, Florida. But Louisville also, with what they're doing, Jawar Jordan had a great year for them. So all 3 of those offenses seem to be a pretty good fit for Penny Boone there. And someone I think keep an eye on to, like, you might hear his name. No matter where he winds up, you're probably going to hear his name in the highlight reels quite a bit.
Yeah, he's coming off a monster year, so I'm not surprised to see him in the portal. Clearly, his best opportunity to launch himself anywhere a bit higher was coming off the heels of the season that he just had. I mean, 1,400 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns. Had one nice performance receiving-wise, but at a few yards receiving there as well, so he can do a little bit of that. But, yeah, as you mentioned, a bruiser and a guy who churned out a lot of yards for Toledo this past season, so hard to pass up on a 1,500 or a 1,400-yard double-digit touchdown back. There's no surprise that he's looking at a little bit of a glow-up himself, and all those teams that you mentioned, he can't really go wrong with any of those.
All right, now we've entered the quarterback portion of the top 5, and this next one, I was a little bit surprised to see, but you got to cash it when you can. Jaden Mayava from UNLV. UNLV just had this great season under Barry Odom, and he wasn't the starting quarterback to start the year, but the starter got injured. He took over and led UNLV to this great season. So here you have a guy cashing in on what his season is, and clearly he's a redshirt freshman, so he's got like lots of eligibility left. There's lots of room to grow for him. He's proven that he can win some games, and UNLV played a couple of big-time opponents. I'm not sure he played early in those games, but he played all the games towards the end of the year. So someone who I'm curious to see where he tries to get that glow up, as you said, Craig.
Yeah, he's definitely not at the list of like your top quarterback prospects right now, but he is a young guy, so he's just starting out. He's a big dude as well. I mean, he's like 6'4", 220, and was just a freshman, so there's a lot of room for improvement there. Definitely needs to cut down on the turnovers, but again, he was a freshman, and so a lot of those came down the stretch in some of their losing streaks. So it was very up and down year for UNLV, but I was very impressed by just their season as a whole and the job done there with Barry Odom. I think that, that's one of those places you always hear about is untapped potential. And when the Big 12 was expanding, we had a lot of the UNLV talk, and they just weren't really ripe for that. But you do wonder if the right coach, the right place, the right time of what he can turn that into. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what UNLV continues to grow into. But obviously you don't want to lose your young quarterback. Yeah. So that's a bit of the downside of not being the biggest school there in the world. So, I don't think he's amongst your top mentioned guys, but as far as a young quarterback with some impressive physical tools, he's certainly going to attract the eye of somebody out there.
Yeah, that's why he's intriguing. Like, again, this is not a surefire thing. None of this is. But, like, for me, this is another guy who's interesting, and it's because this team is coming off the best season I can personally ever remember them having. But Diego Pavia from New Mexico State, kind of the same thing. He is a senior, though, so he's had some time. But, look, New Mexico State just had this great season, and they won the bowl game, and Jerry Kill is now retired again. But they beat Auburn, like all these things. So this is someone maybe, look, he's 5'11", 175 about, or whatever, 185. So he's in the Doug Flutie mold when it comes to size. So you're going to have to protect.
He's like 6 foot.
He is.
Yeah, he's like 6 foot. Typically like 195, 200, like somewhere in there. I'd say 6 foot. He's not 5'7".
Okay. I said 5'11".
Oh, I thought you said 5'7". I was like, no, he's not 5'7". Sorry, that's my bad.
Yeah, he's 5'11".
That's why I disputed that as greatly as I did. I was like, 5'7". You're really
I said he's 5'11". You said he's 6 foot. I'm like, I'm sure he tells girls.
Okay,
he's 6
well,
feet tall.
that's my fault for just mishearing you. I was like, that was doing him some injustice there. So we're on the same page, really.
Yeah. Look. If you're 5'11", you don't tell people you're 5'11" until you get caught. You tell them you're 6 feet tall.
Exactly. Okay, that was my ears going.
Yeah. But 5'11", 172 is what he's listed at. Washington State, Western Kentucky, taking visits there. Now I don't know if this is a guy who's going to jump up to the Power 5 or something like that. Like Washington State would make a ton of sense for him to me. But it's interesting that here's New Mexico State coming off their best season. They've got a senior quarterback going to the portal and trying to cash in, and good for him. But one I think that bears a little looking at.
No, he's a really fun player. He's a really fun player to watch. If you are all Power 5 all the time or all SEC or Big Ten or whatever, then that's one of those guys that you didn't watch or pay attention to or maybe even hear about this year that I think you're missing out on as far as some entertainment value goes. So, yeah, I really enjoyed seeing what I did see of Diego Pavia, and I thought that was a really nice year by New Mexico State, but put up big numbers, put up some nice performances, and I think he's a really intriguing player who's got a good bit of experience under his belt after these past couple of seasons. So it does definitely have some work to do, but and room for improvement. But I think he's an electrifying. I hesitate to say that because that's such a strong word. But he's a playmaker. He's a guy who can make some plays for you. So yeah, I definitely think he's due for a bump up, and very interested in seeing where he might end up.
Yeah, also was at the center was one of the most interesting controversies ever in that in the offseason he was, at New Mexico, which is their rival at their facility, and he peed on the logo.
Yeah,
and
there was that.
And then they wouldn't let him in the indoor because I guess they just felt he was just going to pee everywhere. I don't know, but,
Yeah, there was that. There was that going on. But, yeah, I guess they were afraid he's going to spray all over the place if you let him in. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, he's the conference player of the year this year. But despite all of that controversy, he was fun to watch. So, yeah.
Number one, and we've talked about him a lot on the show today, Caden Salter of Liberty. Pretty intriguing. And I would think that Auburn would have a clear lead here in this. But, again, when you're someone like Caden Salter, who now has gotten the looks around, Hugh Freeze knowing him is something, and Auburn desperately needing someone like Caden Salter is something. But there are other people that need you and other people that have money. So unless he's already made up his mind where to go, he's going to have plenty of options. And we talked about him earlier and how intriguing he could be when it comes to that. So.
He's about as good as you can get as far as the quarterback spot and making leap up at this point. I mean, Will Howard, I don't think there's anywhere that he would end up, all due respect to Ohio State or the like, that you say it's just a massive jump up from where he was at Kansas State. But making the jump from Liberty to potentially Auburn because of the Hugh Freeze connection, or Miami because of the need there, or any of the other number of places that have quarterback appetite at the moment, I think he's about as good as you can do. So, yeah, he was a true dual threat. It seemed like it, at least, and I don't know this off the top of my head, but in looking at his stats every single week, it became kind of annoying because he basically had a player of the week stat line every single week. And it was frustrating because you want to acknowledge that, but at the same time, I'm like, would y'all play somebody that can give you a little bit of a competition? And they did, and we saw that in the bowl game for 3 quarters, how that went. But, yeah, really talented athlete, real dual threat. Can sling it around, but can use his feet and had multiple 100-yard performances. He started off at Tennessee for a reason. As we mentioned, got into a little dust up there and ended up leaving and going to Liberty, but not surprised at all to see his name in the portal. I think he's definitely somebody that makes sense to make the jump up, and that's going to be a big loss for the Flames and Jamie Chadwell. I know that they can kind of transfer in and out guys as well, but that's a really good player that's now not going to be on their roster next year. So, yeah, somebody's going to get a really talented guy from old Cedar Hill, Texas, and we'll see what he's able to do with that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for us. Tomorrow, we've got Cedric Golden booked for the show to talk about UT moving forward. Also, we have Jason Shear, our good buddy, back at 5 o'clock to talk about Arizona. And look, as far as the teams coming in, I mean, I don't think anybody is hotter than Arizona.
Well, it's funny because there was a lot of talking about Arizona during the whole process this past summer. A lot of, like, who cares about them? Take them. They suck. They're not even that good at basketball anymore. You remember all that conversation? Yeah. Their program ain't worth a salt when it comes to football. Jed Fish is a bum. All these different things that we heard. Well, you're not getting any kind of worthwhile football program, and the basketball's overrated. Like a lot of things that were said during the summer, we can revisit that now all these months later and realize how foolish some of that was. But, yeah, I think Arizona's coming in on a heater, and they're one of the programs that you do get excited about next year as far as making some noise amongst that new wave. Utah, obviously, you expect them. You got Rising coming back. You expect them to be right there near the top. But, yeah, Arizona's right there neck and neck, and what a nice performance for them in the bowl game, and and what a nice showing that was for the Wildcats. So, yeah, they're coming in hot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's good enough for us. Thanks to Craig. Thanks to John Kurtz, Jed Drenning, and Jake Hatch, Garrett, Emery, and, of course, Jack McKenzie. We'll be back in tomorrow. See you then, folks.